Started the recording.
We voting on anything?
Just the minutes and the framework.
Well, hopefully we'll get some direction on the things that,
And clearly,
that were
yeah, for sure.
Well,
different.
since we don't have bylaws, we can just,
I think you do have bylaws, though, don't you?
no, we have a charter,
Our
but we
charter,
don't have
right.
bylaws, which is different.
Six out of
From someone
10.
else.
I don't know what quorum is.
There it is,
I
Meg.
say we proceed and
Yeah,
get
well, no,
challenged.
if Meg's here, I think.
Hi.
I was just thinking if we had more than 50%, we would be good.
Wax, how are you?
Well, how are you?
Good.
All righty.
Oh, so
Yep, that's
I don't know what that is.
recording. And just, I've never had to do the whole thing that's there before, so I don't think it should fill up more than 50 gigabytes, but
Okay, good.
if it does, there's no.
Somebody's squishing
Oh, I
this.
thought she was talking about this. Oh my God. I mean, don't sit on that, it's recording.
This is really expensive.
Ah,
Oh, I would have chosen that chair because it was a little comfy. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started so we can make the use of our time. First order of business is a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? All approved, thank you. Second motion is I sent out the revision on the lease framework and feel like we should get some approval on that. So if I can get a motion to approve the framework, move in a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions about that at all? All those in favor? All right, thank you. So really I thought that we would have just a single agenda item specific to what is it, the design, builder design?
Basis of design?
Basis of design, thank you. Because I know there were questions from a few people. I got some emails from some folks as well, just asking since they aren't here. So, Mike, this is a little bit more in your wheelhouse, and I felt like both you and Allison were kind of on the same page on some things. Some of those were some comments that I made mentally as well. I think that might be a good place to start in going through that, and then Tyler, you had an opportunity to review.
Yep, I've been through
comments as
those, and
well.
then
Okay,
Mike and I had been looking at some other
okay,
thoughts about the existing building code, energy codes, and other
yeah.
things, so we're
yeah,
working
okay.
on that. But I would like to understand better how some of these final decisions are being made. I mean, because I think we've got almost two different schools of thought. That we've got
Okay.
some people that are willing or interested in going more on adding the AC and make sure the finishes and other things are at different levels. And I want to make sure that I'm clear on
Sure.
when we do this, because
Yep.
we're trying to be respectful of all these different opinions floating around.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm not sure that there's been consensus. We haven't really done like formal votes or polls, so
Okay.
so I would like some clear direction, but we also kind of view this as a living document up
Okay.
until the point where you send it on to the school board, so
Okay,
we're happy to make changes for whatever the committee
okay.
is looking for.
Good, and I think that's a good way to look at it, is here's kind of the foundation of a starting point.
Yeah.
And it would be a living document, because I think there are some questions in terms of other things that we had discussed, and it's our responsibility to give you that direction. So we will
Bob,
do some-
sorry,
yes,
what,
ma'am.
and what is the exact date that we are presenting this to the school board? Because is it the same?
We need to be done, my understanding, I think from the timeline that Carol gave out, is that essentially we need to be done by the next meeting, which is August 2nd. So, and if we need to meet, again, next week, I'm not here next week, but if we need to put our collective heads together to go through this prior to that, then we should discuss that before we're out of here today. But it's my understanding that in order to meet the timeline, we needed to kind of have everything to the school board, and we need to be wrapped up by August 2nd. All right? So, that being said, Tyler, does it make sense to dive into perhaps where you need clarity and we can try to help give you that direction now out of the gate and then jump into your piece, Mike? Does that
I think
make
if we go
sense, or are
through
they-
those comments that Mike and Allison
Okay.
have, I think that's
Sure.
most of
Kinda
where we
touches on
We'll
it.
probably touch on it, all the
Yeah.
pieces that I'm most concerned about, I guess.
I agree.
I
Okay,
had the same concern Tyler did, but I think we need to be sure coming out of this meeting that we're on the same page. And that if there are concerns and people can't do that by a consensus, then probably we need to vote at some point. Because we're just crushing up against that time frame, and if we don't make those decisions, we can't move forward. There were some things that I thought we were pretty well set on, just because people hadn't said, well, wait a minute, I don't wanna do that, and sort of sent Tyler off to do the design, and that I thought were pretty well decided, not totally, because we had to look at the design to see, but we gotta come out of here.
And I would say the other thing to keep in mind is that this gives us that kind of first pass, and we're gonna get numbers back. But they're gonna be things that when we get all of the cost estimates and numbers, we say, ooh, that's really more than we were expecting.
Yep.
That can be a maintenance item in the future, or geez, that wasn't as bad as we thought, let's move that up and in. So those are things to keep in mind as well, that getting those numbers so that at your next meeting, you're able to make informed decisions is not a bad thing as well.
and I'll, just to your question, Mag, I'll follow up with Maria specifically on, if there's any opportunity to push this out, another week or even two. I'll ask, because I think, we could certainly use the time.
I don't see where we're gonna fit that iterative process in. Like, where are we getting the cost, the cost estimator is gonna be right up against our August,
Second meeting.
yeah, I think.
It sounded like he was gonna give you something by the end of July.
End of
so yeah,
July
he's
is
gonna
what
be
the-
right
what it
there.
said.
Yeah.
But I think, if you got an extra week or two,
That
would
would
certainly
be
help.
awesome if we did.
All I can do is ask.
But does it depend on when they meet? I mean, or do they have to schedule a special meeting in
Well,
order
if they need to schedule a special meeting, I'm assuming they can do that. My takeaway from Carol's feedback is that they were kind of bumping up against the wall in terms of when things needed to be submitted for the warrant. I believe.
Plus, the SAD meets the third week. I was in the wrong district. CSD meets the first
Welcome back.
week of the month.
see if I can pull up there.
Okay.
Tough with the school board members. We're talking about
I know.
voting today, like since they're not here, a little bit hard to vote on things and develop a consensus.
Well,
I mean, we
We
can
gotta
all,
give it to them.
yeah, I think
right.
it's.
I guess they get another chance to decide
They
too,
will.
so,
They will. It's gotta go through them eventually anyways.
right.
Their meeting is on the 13th.
Okay.
Sounds better.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
And now are we presenting to them, or is this just like we're passing a document along?
We're basically, it's my understanding that Carol and Marcia and Pete would be basically saying, okay, here's what we have decided upon, and here's the kind of the final. That's my understanding. You got a question?
I was going to ask Wax, can you just repeat again? What were you saying at the end of today's meeting? You're thinking we need to be at what place again?
I'm thinking we need to be at a place where we have basic decisions made about an agreement about what we want to see going forward. Because we've come back and revisited a number of things a number of times over the last couple of weeks, and we can't keep revisiting. It's crunch time.
Yep.
And I also hear what Tyler says, is yeah, you're going to be there, but when you get the cost estimates, some of those things that you thought were good might not look so
So good,
good. So there still has to be room to do that, but we need to go out of the room with a pretty good consensus of where we are.
Yeah.
We sort of mushed it around a little bit, and people had lots of opportunity for input, but it is decision time. If we're gonna put elevators this place, if we're gonna do bathrooms this way or that, we need to look around the table and say, yeah, I can live with that. I'm okay with that. May not be my first choice, but we're not always gonna get first choices on these, and that's the way consensus
In this case,
sort of works.
Yep.
I guess I had kind of thought that some of this, we were gonna be sending a couple different things to the cost estimator, and then making some of our decisions based on the cost, like. when
Yeah,
we
that's
talk
what I
some-
heard Tyler just say too. We
Okay.
come out of here with a decision though, of where we wanna be, and then we revisit that decision when we get the cost estimates, cause that may skew to what we're trying to do or what we think we wanna do.
Well, and then the independent cost estimator is gonna need to know really kind of the same thing, the direction in terms that we give Tyler as well. We were gonna actually try to meet with him yesterday, and we pushed it to tomorrow because I want to have this meeting to make sure we were all in agreement on the path forward. You had direction as well, because, for example, if we decided to take away stairs, for example, if the independent cost estimator doesn't know that, you know, he's putting together documents for something that's gonna be different than what the independent cost estimator's doing. I wanna make sure that we're all on the same page. So, as a starting point, anyway.
And my goal, just so everyone's aware, is I'm hoping to walk out of here with some clear direction so I can update this report tomorrow, because I am on vacation next week, and
Dear.
I know.
I've been on
And my-
vacation all week, I've been working on this all week, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
My phone will be off, so,
That was my mistake.
yes.
All right, let's dig in this, so we got plenty of meat on this bone, so let's start.
Yeah, well, right off the bat, I guess this is page one. It occurred to me that, what about the walls in the basement? Like, why are we taking them out? At least, maybe, I can see some of them, but,
Well, we had planned on leaving the load-bearing corridor walls
right,
and kind of removing, I don't want to say junk, but there's a lot of less desirable stuff down there that really should come out.
there's also, I mean, there's a basic classroom layout down there that could stay. And like, I just know from, trying to find the basement layout, but
We've got some,
you know, I know from trying to lease spaces to people that if you took them into the space like this, they're gonna be like, oh, geez, we gotta build that, we gotta do that. It's just, it could be an impediment to a future tenant. And whereas if this was demised, at least in the large chunks of the classrooms that were there. And granted, it does get a little squirrely. There's a lot of add-on stuff inside of the classroom. So we could clean that up and paint it white and leave the finishes, you know, but leave, for the most part though, the old classroom walls.
so would you just take it down to the square rectangles, take the bathrooms out, those weird
I
little...
think so, although
weird little raised
later in
pieces?
here, I did raise the question about needing bathrooms on that floor at some point.
You will eventually need bathrooms on
Yeah,
that
so-
floor, but the plumbing is gonna be rerouted to, we need a new sewer exit, so the stuff that's there is not gonna make sense. And our thought too is that the more kind of noisy, nasty demolition that you get done before we complete the upper floors and move administrative and school staff in, the better. But I mean, again, this is your building, so you guys,
So, that's, my only point was that I think that when a tenant comes in, they're gonna want some of the walls. And so if you take them all away and then you just have to put them back again, granted, you might put them back in a little bit of a different spot, but you could probably live with a bunch of them and then it's just you're that much further along. You know,
Yep.
and as I think about this, and this only comes from trying to rent spaces to people.
Sure.
For a lot of different projects, and it's harder to land that big tenant, you know, especially in this market. You know, this isn't Portland, this isn't Augusta, where there's lots of state offices, you know. My thinking has kind of evolved, and as I look at this, there could be, you know, maybe 4 to 6 tenants in this space. And they might take a classroom or 2 classrooms and be happy with the spaces and just bring in office furniture inside of those classroom spaces. And if we leave some of that stuff, it might be an easier get and an easier process on the back end. And you don't have as much demo, and, you know, maybe it saves some money, so. But that was my thought. So,
Well, I would agree in a sense because the basement piece is a little bit unknown in terms of the tenant piece. If we don't really know for sure, because that's so far out, does it make sense to take out walls when we don't really know what that's gonna be? And so if that's an opportunity, I think it's reasonable to explore that.
If we needed to take out walls later, once we rented it, it's not gonna be any more significant. Taking out a couple of walls down there is not a
No.
huge thing, I wouldn't think.
I think the best thing to do would be to leave it clean in larger chunks of the classroom space. And I'd like to have some future plumbing, like, you know, maybe not have the bathroom done, but like, at least if we're gonna do a new sewer hookup, which I was wondering why we are, but if we're gonna do a new sewer hookup, let's place the bathroom and have it come up and have it, you know, plugged, you know, capped off so we can tap into it.
So it's kinda like having infrastructure in place.
Yeah, you're ready to go, you
Right,
have some of
so-
your walls up, but
But this is one of the, all right, these are the things that are very hard for me to take, let's leave some walls and make it clean. So what does that mean?
So,
Are we-
I mean, look at the plan.
Do you wanna just do like this type of thing?
yeah, leave the original classroom walls.
And that's it? And we're gonna take one of these for mechanical room anyways, but, and the quarters are load bearing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Is that sufficient?
I think something like that, yeah.
And I would say clean to me means you take out the shelving and anything that's against the walls or anything that's an add-on in there. But that
Yeah,
makes
it's like-
sense, then you can show a space, it's a clean space, it's got the walls.
Like this is the bathroom, and it's got that raised floor, and it's, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that, soft materials in poor condition that the faster you get them out of there, the better your environment will be.
Right.
See, like, what you just sketched right there, like, if you took a prospective tenant in there, all of a sudden, the hallway makes sense, they see the rooms, all the rooms are kind of the same size, they're like, oh, I can picture my people in here and in this room, can I take these two rooms? Oh, okay, you know? If it's left you know, if we do, what demo we do in there, you know, patch the walls, maybe paint it all white, and it'll be ready to go with some future plumbing, hopefully, and, you know.
So does that make sense, Tyler, to you? Is you've got enough to do that if we were to say,
Well, it's all diagrammatic at this point, so I mean, what we're trying to do is get enough money in the budget so that if you say, oh, well, we don't want the bathroom there, we'd rather be here, we have enough to have that little bit of trenching and
Yeah.
stuff, so
Yeah.
we can make this work.
And that will save some money,
Well,
right?
so just, I'm glad you said that, because that's my perspective, like,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to just make sure we have a big enough budget. What I'm nervous about is if we just keep throwing stuff at this, the budget's gonna be so big that the people aren't gonna vote for this, and the building's gonna get torn down. That's my concern. So, that's why I kinda go through each one of these and say, how can we do this smarter or cheaper, or, that's my mindset at every turn, so that's where I'm coming from, I guess.
I think that's a good way to be looking at it.
yeah,
I support that. I mean,
Yeah.
I like what you just described, and I think that'll save us, and I think it'll make it more rentable down the road,
Yeah,
more options.
I concur. If we could, going back to the bathroom space though, if we're talking about just having, I think Waxy said, infrastructure in place for that, to not have any type of prep work for a bathroom, I think is a mistake.
That might be.
I mean, well, just because something's gonna have to happen there at some point in time, but if we're gonna be doing some demo or cleanup or whatever it may be, doesn't it make sense to try to do something in
Absolutely, yeah,
preparation
I mean,
for that?
Yeah, we're gonna be running the new sewer out the back of the building, kind of over in this general area, so if we circle this as the future bathroom, we stub in the drains and things in the floor,
Yeah.
and
Okay. Does that
In
make
better
sense
shape.
to
I mean,
everybody?
if you did a layout of a bathroom.
oh yeah, we can,
Because you know, originally I was thinking like, oh, these are gonna be a bigger tenant with their own fit out, and they might even have their own bathroom and, you know, kitchenette in their own space, but I think it would rent easier if there was a common bathroom outside of the rentable space, and maybe even a common kitchenette outside the rentable space, and then I could really picture renting those classroom-sized spaces pretty easily.
well, right on this side,
Yep.
old bathroom becomes the kitchenette,
Yep.
and
Makes sense, the plumbing's right above it too.
yep,
and-
so we run a little bit of cabinetry.
What about the little kitchen that's already in there?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, it's really not, no, the one that's there,
This one?
right, the existing. Is that the design or is that existing?
This is
Not
existing.
much of a kitchen.
There's a
There's not
fridge
much,
and a,
not much there other than there's not,
there's a stove and a
is there
fridge
even,
and a,
is there a sink?
I think so.
We have a sink on our plan.
Is-
You're not gonna provide a stove though in the
No,
kitchen?
No,
You just need a microwave or refrigerator and a
Okay,
sink.
because that's going the
Yeah.
wrong way on costs.
Absolutely, yeah.
we'll take the stove out of there and put the, I think there's a microwave in there too.
Yeah, I mean, if you could back the bathrooms up to that and it's already there, I don't know.
I'll take a walk over before I leave and see what this thing actually looks like.
So it sounds like unless somebody is not on board, that we're in agreement on that. I think that's the kind of thing we need to look around the table and say, yeah, I can live with that, I'm okay with it. And we go with it and we say that's a decision that, at least till we get the cost figures we've made.
Yeah, agree.
And I think the only thing I'd add to this discussion is, if we're talking about plumbing in the basement or plumbing anywhere in that building, this guy thinks it all needs to be new. We cannot reuse any plumbing, any electrical, any sprinkler system or part of it. It all needs to be new. It's all very, very old. And I don't want to go into this and have some other facility director 5 years down the road having to deal with the MED building. Because it's not going to be.
You're not
me.
going into
Oh, really? Are you trying to tell us something right now?
Okay. All right. Any other
Yeah,
questions
there
on
is
the
a,
basement?
there is a sink, this is the, here it is.
You can go take a look at it and see what.
For me, as long as Tyler says it makes sense, then that's good.
So what's the next one?
But if you're gonna put new plumbing in, back it up right next to the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense to try to
Oh,
retrench all
nice
the way
little
over.
kitchen. Oh, you move right in.
Okay, moving on.
So I guess the next part of this is civil, right?
Yep.
And I just had a question, what happened to the connection to the bus barn? Like, why did that go away?
Well, we haven't put that in there, because it wasn't what we priced out through the value management. We left that as being resurfaced as field, but that is certainly something that we can look at. I think when our engineers took a look at it, is it didn't actually save any parking, because you end up taking all of these spots and then all of these spots that we added in. So it was kind of an offset. So we eliminated the impervious, got a little bit more on kind of a crowded field site and left it there. But we can certainly try to, I mean, it's an option.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not a big deal. I guess the cost estimator is looking at this as the existing condition, so it's
Yeah.
not like he's pricing in demo of that right at this point.
No, we already own demolition of that,
So
the middle school.
If it
project.
stays, it would be a savings to the school project, not anything to do with
Right, and I'm not sure what the school board's
position.
position
I
is
mean,
on.
from my perspective, if some of the parking is gonna be needed for this building, and it's over here, you know, it'd be nice if you can't find a spot, just to do that. I guess you can come this way, but then you have to
I
just
think
walk.
the idea is that this parking ends up remaining, well, I guess it was, so we've got some that's gonna serve this building.
Oh.
So,
Um,
yeah, I don't know.
Just wondering, I guess.
With that, I guess, I think it makes sense to leave, from the perspective of Knowlton Street, leaving the options, even if we don't use that as, right away as an access point to the MET building or to the school. It's, you know, right now you can drive from Mechanic Street and go up there and loop around, and there is a way to get to the school that doesn't involve going to the top of Knowlton Street and driving down. And so I think just for the school in general, it makes sense to preserve that as an option, so later down the road certain points, or even from a fire safety
just that-
standpoint, just that other access, even if they most of the time don't use it. And I would think that probably if I
Takes a
lived on
little
Knowlton
tra-
Street, I would
Takes a little
like,
traffic off Knowlton Street.
yeah, then you can get in that way. Otherwise, the only way is
It's
going all
one
the way
way
to the
though,
top.
isn't it?
Not that lower part though.
Below the intersection.
No, the connector.
The connector is one way
Here.
this way.
Connector
I mean,
here
it
is
doesn't
one
have to
way.
be, but it is currently,
It's
right, yeah.
It's a nuisance, I left. I go both ways, I think.
But so sometimes I park down by the wastewater treatment plant if I really have to, and you walk up and don't deal with that upper part of Knowlton Street at all.
Yeah. It sounds like it's
I'm
not a
following-
crucial thing
no,
at this
I-
point.
I'm just not really following what is up for debate right now in this point.
Whether or not to, the connector is,
The drop-off loop,
yes,
right?
yes,
Whether or not to keep it or
stays or goes.
And just keep in mind too, I think one of the things that we heard from the school board was that they didn't want us changing a lot of the existing middle school site plan. That was,
And that stuff's
that
on the
was-
existing site.
well, and it doesn't mean that if it makes a lot of sense that we don't take it forward, but I heard at one school board meeting that they talked for quite a bit about, like they, not even.
you mean so the existing, as in the existing plan
Yeah, sorry, we
for the
shouldn't-
new school?
No,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
existing.
The
existing
final
bus loop.
new middle school, which is what we're considering our existing, so, yeah, it's-
change that.
sorry.
Like those parking spots that were, because the
Yeah, they
school
talked about
board,
that.
board meeting that I heard them talk about that, I think this one, maybe the one you're referring to was about those parking spots.
Yeah, and just the interconnect. And I think that is something that, even though it's a change to the middle school, that it's a significant improvement to the function of that site.
Absolutely.
We should bring it forward. Where this one is more of a convenience. And if it happens, I think it's great. And if it doesn't, I think that's fine too. So,
I think it's an issue that it doesn't weigh too much on the MET building.
No.
I think, personally, I think it's a good idea to keep it, but that's just, it's like a whole separate issue.
Right.
It doesn't really impact MET.
Yeah, I don't think.
For the process
I don't think it
we're going
affects
forward.
our plan,
Yeah.
our recommendations.
But it would provide a second way of getting to the MET building that wouldn't involve driving past the planned school bus loop and all of that stuff. So, I mean, I do think it impacts it a little bit because you're not having to, somebody can access the MET building theoretically without having to funnel through the school,
If you made it
Two-way.
I
two-way.
don't think it's wide enough for
Right.
two-way, but
No, but also remember that we took the rebuilding that softball field out during the VE. That's not to say that's one of those things that may go back in, and
that's true.
because we need to do that still. And if that goes back in, we lose that. So it becomes a moot point.
Yeah, I think we have to limit ourselves to this building
Yeah.
for right now and focus on that. And yeah, there may be some other things, and I'm sort of inclined to agree with you, Allison, that if you can take traffic off Knowlton Street and do that, that's fine. But I'm not sure that's our purview right now, since that piece is in the other plan.
No, that's more something that Tyler can bring up to the,
Yeah.
casual to the powers that be.
Okay,
Uh,
moving on.
Moving on, so Allison, I don't have your comments,
I
I'm reading
got
off,
it
so
here.
just remind me, the next one I had was the
She's got a
LP
question.
tanks.
She's got a question on
Okay.
the water service.
All right.
And
Oh,
I
the
think
reasons for the new, is it just, I know the sewer service,
the sewer's, I think, completely shot all the way out. But the water service, we're required by NFPA now to have a 6-inch water line for sprinkler systems.
Right now, the
there's a
domestic and
two.
the sprinkler are sharing 1.5 inches.
1.5 or
Or
2-inch
2
line. So what's there is not sufficient for the building.
okay, so it's an add-on, it's,
Code thing.
It's a code requirement.
Okay.
Okay.
Keep on trucking.
Yep.
The LP tanks, do they have to be below ground, or?
I'm not sure where you'd put them where they wouldn't be a nuisance or take parking.
Yeah.
So our recommendation is below ground.
I can tell you that
We have differing opinions on this, but that's okay.
I wanted to move them above ground on the new project, and
You didn't win that fight?
I didn't win that.
Why is that?
What
For
were your-
access?
Let me see, I think Jamie put it this way. When I pay $350 for the hotel room and I drawer open the shades and I'm looking at the top of propane tanks, I don't want that to happen in the band room or wherever.
Okay.
And I think you'd have the same thing here.
Probably more.
I don't know where you'd put them either.
I don't-
How much of an added cost is it to bury them?
I think that,
I don't know.
It could be nothing.
yeah, because Maritime
Because-
owns yours at the,
The fuel company will own them.
right.
You pay incrementally a little bit more for the fuel over time.
We have to dig a hole,
But-
basically.
Yeah,
And then we might have to pump the water out of the hole and all.
Well, no, if you bury the tanks and you buy the tanks yourself, then you can get fuel from anybody.
Right, but
So
I think-
right, but you also are responsible then for testing them every year and certifying them, and it's not a hassle that we really want to do.
So you're gonna commit to a supplier and let them bury their own tanks.
You commit for like 5 years, and at the end of the 5 years, if you go with another supplier, they basically just sell that equipment to the other supplier.
Yeah. You pay for the tanks either way, one of them you
Yeah,
pay.
yeah.
You pay the bill and the other one you
And
pay up
nickels,
front.
yeah, so,
There aren't a lot of companies, are there?
anyways,
But you maybe save yourself headaches.
I mean,
There's
I would agree, like, if they were,
probably only
if they-
3 in the area
Yeah.
that are gonna do that anyway.
they were to be put on above ground where they are located now, that would be pretty ugly. They'd be front and center in
yeah,
the
do that.
site. So I agree with you there. I just,
Yeah, I didn't know where else on that site to put them.
yeah.
All right, so are we
So
good?
they
with
stay buried.
buried?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
The next one I have is sanitary sewer. But we heard about that, so I guess I'll leave that one alone. Electrical, what about overhead service instead of underground? How is it served now?
Right now, it goes into,
It comes out of
Okay.
about as far away from here as you can
Yeah.
get.
And is the current building
Goes
served
underground.
overhead?
No, it's underground.
Okay.
and if we're gonna be excavating that area anyway, it's a little bit of,
Well, so,
or where'd they
let's
pull
see.
the,
Where is
did they
it?
take it off the pole down near the, is it that one? That's the,
There was, yeah, it originally came right off the pole right out front.
Oh, they're coming in with a water line.
yeah, so it's really just the
Yeah.
little 4-inch conduit cost.
Yeah. All right, I guess that makes sense. So exterior lighting,
Yeah, I'm sorry, did we come to resolution on above ground or in?
I think, like you're saying, it's just right near the water line.
Yeah, it's,
So it's just gonna be running.
So-
yeah, we're gonna dig that hole anyways for the water line and
Okay.
conduits.
So you
And,
put the power in.
yeah.
Got
Because
it.
it'd be, the transformer would be pole mounted, and it's just secondary power coming in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so you, next one up was exterior lighting. So you said delete 2, which ones were you
Well,
thinking?
so I just thought, this one, and maybe this one, I don't know.
I think one of the reasons that they put those out there was to help light the secondary path that's going across there. And maybe we could do that with building mounted ones, but I know the planning board is somewhat sensitive about the light pollution, and obviously the further that you go, the more spillage that you're gonna have, but
Well, Allison, you had a comment in yours specific to, I mean, is that something that we need to?
It is a little hard to keep up with the light stuff in Camden. Mike probably
Yeah.
knows some about it too.
the
There's
fixtures
a-
that we have will be dark sky compliant
Okay.
regardless. I mean, that's just, we put the full cutoff shields on them. We as a firm, sustainability wise, work toward that regardless, so.
Okay.
Selecting thoughtful fixtures will just be
That's just.
it's not
part
a
of the-
cost implication, the fixture,
Got it.
it's just the shields.
What's there now, I guess? Is this parking lot lit at all now?
Out back,
This
The side of MET?
side?
there's a CMP streetlight.
Yeah.
But is there anything in the parking lot?
Seems kind of pretty
Yeah,
light
that-
there.
Isn't that,
It's like on the edge of the parking
There
lot.
was a
There's
couple
nothing.
times.
Just a
it's
Cobra
not
head
a
over
lot.
there?
Yeah,
I
it's
think
just a
so.
street light
I
that
think so.
Mhm.
illuminates enough.
I guess this is the kind of stuff too. I don't know how much, every time you add lighting and lighting poles, how much cost we're adding. So that's where I'm coming from in most.
Yeah, pole lights are
Places.
not inexpensive.
12,000 a pole maybe, I don't know.
It might be a little high, but it's not, probably not far off.
I mean, if they're smaller, maybe
I don't know
more
if we
pedestrian
had-
style, I don't know.
Can't remember if we had
7 or
60 or
8,000.
20-foot poles, I don't remember.
It seems light enough there now when I walk through at night. But I haven't really thought about it that much.
It depended a little bit on the usage of it. You know, if it has a tenant in there that's going till 5 o'clock in the evening, there's a lot of months of the year that you need, I don't think it would be sufficient lighting right now if you had anything more than just a couple of school staff wandering from the office to their car, which is all you have right now.
Mm.
So it's sufficient for me to leave, walk to my car and be fine. But if you had the teen centre open till 5 o'clock in there, or some other function, kids coming and going and families coming and going, picking up, you might want the extra light. I guess we don't know that.
It seems like we do have a lot of things going on. I mean, there are things happening at the school all the time where people park on the street and in the parking lot there, and
They're not directly going into that building is the only thing I'd say. It's really rare that there are people coming into
Going
the
to
MET
fields?
doors.
You know,
What's that?
They're parking to go to the fields? I mean, I
maybe,
notice there's a bunch of cars in there now, or is that a?
No, that's, we let
Oh,
one of the boats use it, but
moneymaker, huh?
I don't think it makes us any money actually, but we probably should. I'm not sure if it does. Anyway,
maybe if there's a pole mounted one along Knowlton Street, maybe you can just get rid of one at least, closest to Knowlton Street.
Yeah, I
And
don't know
then
if there's
leave this one and that one and that one.
I don't know if there's a head over there or not. There might be.
sometimes the town gets complaints from people that don't like the street lights near their house
Yeah.
too. So I don't know how the people on Knowlton Street, we wouldn't want it to be probably drastically different than what it
Bob's
is
in charge of that.
now. Maybe you could start
Liaison.
paying attention to the lighting there, Bob.
Yeah,
and-
I'll take a look at that tonight, actually, because I hadn't really thought about it.
Well, obviously, it's not bothering you then.
Well, I
What's
mean,
there
You
now?
know, it's easy enough for me because I'm farming it down, but at the same time, you know, there's a house right next to the parking lot, obviously, and then the other house is across the street as well.
I used to live in that house.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How about we
One
just
next to
take
parking
one
lot?
fixture off?
Yeah, I'll talk, see if we can,
Didn't notice it was a problem.
Just
But I'm
use the
also
Ford
not
and move
fussy.
them around.
yeah.
I think
It
something like that.
was,
Yeah.
So what are you suggesting that we,
there's one pretty close to the entrance, which we actually may be required to have that one to light the entrance, but we'll find out. I'll ask them how they came up with those locations.
If this pole happened to have a light on it already, and you wouldn't need this one. Perhaps.
so you wanted to get rid of, you said two?
Yeah, I was thinking these two, but I didn't know what they were for necessarily, or maybe add something on the building, but you're right, Doc, you know, we don't want floods, because that's light pollution, so I'm just looking at this now and thinking, well, yeah, if there is something on Milton Street already that's flooding this area, then why do we need this one, you know, just maybe this one is.
Or maybe we move that in western one, this one a little closer to the center.
Yeah,
So I'll find out.
We gotta look at that when, at night would be
yeah.
helpful, probably.
Good. All right, thank you.
All right.
Is there fiber optic
It's fiber here now.
now?
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah, but that's innocent land.
Yeah, which I think your
Which
contract's up, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they'll,
So, but we'll put back new fiber into the building when we.
That'll be a
Use-
great selling
use
point for
separate-
leasing.
I think it's in a separate.
Oh, you have
conduit.
4 4-inch conduits coming in, so I have.
It's probably two and a spare, at least
Yeah.
one spare. That's probably one for copper.
We'll definitely wanna play that up when we go to
Yeah, fiber.
advertise.
Absolutely,
For the basement, yeah.
Right.
yeah.
All right, so the next one was scope of new paving is not clear. Can we utilize existing?
Yeah, what's the plan, what was planned, I guess?
That existing surface in the back is in fairly poor condition.
Yeah.
It's, I think it's,
like the
it's-
parking lot is relatively new and relatively good. Not out back, the
so
lot on the
is
end.
essentially at the edge of the curb where the gate is.
The whole drop-off loop is probably
Yeah,
good too.
the drop-off loop in that parking lot we redid, well, 6 or 8 years ago.
So maybe just the back, repave the back.
Yeah, and we're gonna need
And
to do,
restripe that?
So it
we're gonna have
was
to do
about
some
6 or 8
grading
years
anyways
ago.
on this side as we connect over to the new parking lot.
So maybe like a,
So I
this
think-
is that sidewalk, so maybe from that
Yep,
sidewalk
that's just what I was gonna mark up.
to there.
So that would cut it back considerably.
So, just so everyone can see, basically, from here to the edge of the project, right there, all this. So you'd tear up the old pavement and just repave, or regrade and repave.
Yeah, we'll need to regrade and repave. I think as part of the middle school project that we're running I think our sanitary sewer comes right through there
Oh,
anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
It does, comes right through the new
Yeah.
pavement at the end.
So is that's a cut in the overall initial plans?
Well, I
for
wasn't
paving?
sure
Or
what,
not?
what the plans showed, I guess, for paving.
Because it's not new paved surfaces, it's just repaving of
No,
what,
you're gonna dig this up and repave it.
but not like, not turning grassy area
Right.
into
No,
paved
No,
area.
it's all
Okay.
on existing.
This is existing impervious, which is important. I don't see any keynotes for that.
Now, when that's getting regraded, it probably is a huge add-on to try and do something with the entrance somewhere so that it's more at floor level when you enter. Like
You mean the new entrance? The new entrance is gonna come in about 2 feet above the basement level. I think is about where that grade
Okay.
ends up is by the time that you get down there.
So it'll be a handicap entrance off that.
Yeah, come in at grade and then the elevator and stair are right there to get you to the other floors.
Okay.
Okay.
Because one of the suggestions was maybe not to have the elevator go all the way to the.
Yeah, just do a ramp.
Yeah.
Yep, that's certainly possible. 2 feet is 24 feet of ramp though.
Just wrap it around the elevator. I mean, it's not ideal, but it would save a bunch of money, I think.
Think?
I don't know, well,
You'd eliminate
Instead-
one stop on an elevator, so you'd have the door opening and the travel
in
distance.
the pit excavation going down below,
Yeah, you might save a foot.
oh, maybe not.
Would it help with any kind of security, anything, or?
I think it would make security harder because now you're gonna have this, somewhere you've got 24 feet of ramp and a landing is,
I just mean the division between Zenith and the superintendent's offices and this rented space. Like, if the elevator didn't go all the way down, would that just simplify that issue? I know I've gone to hotels where it's like sometimes the roof is open and sometimes it's not, and you have to get.
There are
And so are
floors
we
they don't let you go to.
creating? Are there going to be times when this elevator will not go to the basement, and then it will?
the
And,
way we've got it set up though, we could have doors separating all of those floors.
Doors that would lock it off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think we
So you
should,
come out of the elevator, but you couldn't get to the door.
Mhm.
we've already got that, oh, I'm not showing the door,
That would
on
probably
the
be
Zenith floor.
a lot less technical than trying to program the elevator.
Yeah, I
So
don't
the
think you'd wanna
security
try
is,
to.
the security is like downstream from the elevator.
Yeah, you can do a cross-quarter door right there that you get into the
A
elevator
buzz end
festival.
kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
which we'd wanna do for security anyways.
That's good.
And no, we want an elevator that can access all the floors because maybe we'll have some kind of a tenant that will be interacting with,
Or it could
I
be
mean,
the tenant
ideally.
themselves. I mean, I think you want to be as welcoming for whoever you get in there as you can be. And if it's not a significant cost difference, and I'm hearing you say it,
Well, it's, by the time that you build 24 feet of ramp with railings and
that's going to
then
get weather.
the actual physical space that you're taking up that you won't be able to rent,
mm,
Yeah.
okay.
it probably would be less to build the ramps, but I think it would,
Elevator be a lot cleaner.
yes. I mean, it'd be probably a 12-foot wide chunk front to back that you take to do it.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that might save us $50,000, or it might save us, no, not
Might
even that
save
much.
you $2,000. I think
Oh.
an opening because the elevator's gonna have the same vertical rise, or pretty close to, within a couple feet regardless. So what you're gonna save is the opening in the shaft and the enclosure and one extra call button. So we're not talking huge dollars.
And a little less pit excavation.
Yeah,
Because
a little bit, and that's gonna be mostly hand.
You probably
done, too.
still have to get into the slab of the basement.
Oh, you're getting in the slab in the basement regardless, because
Oh, because it's a,
it's a holeless hydraulic, but
Oh,
it's a
right.
4.5 or between 4 and 5 foot pit, depending on the
so
manufacturer.
you would be into the slab anyway, so that kind of ruins
Yeah.
that idea.
Okay, so elevator, all floors.
Oh, we skipped it. We'll remember that when we get to it.
Okay.
We moved into the bridge.
All right, so we've sorted out the paving. Use asphalt. You said
I saw Cape Cod curve instead of sloped granite. Like, where is the granite, I guess?
there's not much. I think the slope granite is probably
Right here, SGC, slope granite curve, is that
Yep.
what that is? So,
around that piece, and there might be some around that island. I don't know if that's a
yeah,
curved island.
I hate asphalt curving.
I mean,
It
it
breaks
gets,
down.
it gets marked up, I mean, smushed.
And so, this is just information that we have because we just went through it. The school board elected not to take the savings for concrete and asphalt curb as part of the middle school project for not wanting to kind of kick that can down the road for the maintenance. Doesn't mean
Is
anything.
that your
but
feeling
it's-
too, about curb? Just plows mashing it up,
Yeah.
knocking it off.
Kids, skateboards.
All over town, people are parking on the sidewalks too, and it's like, it's terrible.
I haven't seen that. I saw a picture of it in the
ITI
paper, but-
Parade is on
Yeah, I
on a
saw
mission,
that,
but
yeah. But I personally haven't seen them doing it.
Now I'm noticing it
Wants to go
more.
in and park on
And
that.
Rick
sidewalk,
Seibel can't
yeah.
stand it. Rick Seibel's like his pet
Start
peeve.
towing.
So granite sidewalk it is.
Yes.
Yeah, granite.
And people don't
And
seem to do
there's
it
not
as
a lot
much with
of
the
it.
granite.
Curb, not sidewalk, sorry, curb, that's what I meant.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
You wanna see bad parking manners, pull into the high school during an event.
Yes,
Anytime.
it is
Yeah, it's
very wild
Keith,
over
don't get
there.
us off task here, come on. We're working through a long document.
I always call that creative, Keith. A creative.
So this,
parking.
this storm drain, like, what's going on there? Why are we replacing storm drain over by the bus barn as part of this project?
The west side of the bus barn.
I don't know, right here, this, right here?
That's a 24, so it's that 18 to this, so right there, looks like it's the new section.
We're not creating any more impervious area here, and we're replacing storm drain over here.
West side of the bus barn is the,
Sewer plant.
Sewer near the sewage treatment plant.
And the north is
It,
just,
I'm guessing, and I'll talk to
That's
Steve,
actually
our civil
kind of
engineer, I'm
like-
guessing it has to do with how we redirected the water as part of the middle school site. So I don't know the answer, but I can find out.
that's their problem, right?
Yeah, that cost,
Oh, yeah.
I agree, that cost shouldn't be in this. I mean, we're trying to do this, we wanna make sure those
Well-
costs are where they're supposed to be.
We have covered the cost necessary for the work we have in the middle school, and if it's a result of changing the, I mean, to me, it doesn't matter, because
I
we
know,
gotta
it's
design it either way.
It's
so.
same pockets, but we gotta sell the project at the lowest piece we can get
But the middle school project's not gonna pay for upgrades
as a
to
result
keep
of
this.
this, I understand.
I don't think they can,
No, I understand that.
so.
still,
So Tyler, maybe the direction is to go back and just check, and if it's.
Yeah, I need to understand
something
better
that
what
we
the,
don't have to do, won't, but if it is, you can come back to on that.
Yeah.
the west side.
Okay.
Pl- Are we in the planting section yet?
I
We're in
think
the
not
sub
yet.
drainage.
yeah, we just finished sub drainage.
Oh, we
So
did? That's
what-
done?
What you have here, what I
That is-
understand, is you wanna dig around the whole building and put
Oh,
under drain,
no, I guess we're not.
foundation drain.
Yeah, we're in some.
Finished transfer Friday. Correct.
Like, where'd that come from?
That has to do, some of it's from our geotech and some of it's from the existing water infiltration problems that have happened in the building in the past.
So is that like a French drain idea or something?
We would dig down, basically down to the footing about 4 feet. likely damp-proof the foundation when we're there and install an under drain so that you have positive drainage away from the building. When you've got a partially submerged building with occupied rentable space down there.
Are some of those water
That's gonna be a
issues,
big number.
yeah, gonna get cleared up maybe when we do some of the masonry work? And I know my basement, like all of a sudden there was this little crack and little thing with the brick, and all of a sudden it's getting wet after 100 years of
Yep.
it being dry. And
There's-
that maybe when you fix some of the other things, it's,
No, I think the infiltration issues that you have now are the result of stuff that's happening below grade.
Or
So-
are they like from above? You know, I don't know, maybe Keith knows, I don't know.
I think it's both. We know some of it's from above, but we have dealt with foundation
Coming up
cracks.
through the slab or,
And, yeah,
So again,
Has
this
that
is
made
something
it
that
created a mold issue?
we have dealt with mold down there too, so
Okay.
we've had remediation.
And that's one you
twice.
want to not have to deal with.
especially if you have a tenant.
Yeah.
But again, these are things that, this is our best recommendation. If that's not the direction that you want to go, just let us know and we'll advise you that we recommend
Well, is there an
it.
alternative? Is it an all or nothing kind of thing? Or are there other ways to deal with that water and that moisture?
I mean, I guess we don't even know if is any drainage, there certainly isn't any waterproofing.
There
You know
is,
that. You know,
there are some what appear to be poorly functioning interior drains down there that, right, that there's
There
a
are
couple of those trench boxes.
those house
that you-
drains that go out to
Something.
whatever.
Some of them appear to be
Oh.
disconnected. So there's a few areas down there that currently, you pull a cover box and there's standing water in old drain lines that we would like to not have down there. But this is,
could we invest, would it be helpful if like the town came over with the camera stuff that they do and
I don't know.
figured it, like tried to figure any of that out, or?
you're looking at the wrong guy.
I don't think they have the equipment to do any of that. I mean, we know what we've cameraed the, you know, the sewer drains and stuff, but,
Like dye testing, or we've been doing all these surveys of everybody's basement to see where things are connected to and where they're not and where they're drained to, and
yeah, but they're just looking to see if it goes in the sewer, that's all they're looking for.
wouldn't it be good to know where the floor drains go if they're not working properly?
They don't, if you're talking about what.
Like opening up covers and seeing standing water. It kind of sounds like maybe that was a drain that worked properly at one point and now there's standing water and maybe there's something we could do. or-
What's being drained in those floor drains? Where's the water coming from?
It's likely groundwater.
It's likely groundwater,
So
yeah.
it's coming up in, it's not coming down through and draining out.
These boxes are, it's called a house drain. It's where the original sewer plumbing came through. They inverted the trap above ground so you can access it. And then at one point, it literally went down through a hole into another pipe, but since been reconnected to go out. And they go under the footing, and so this water is,
Coming up through.
it's, that is groundwater, and it's at
Yeah, we could
or
cut that
above
out.
footing level.
If those pipes are no longer being used, we can cut them out and cast over it. Make it like the rest of the basement slab.
Sometimes mice build things in them and like I
Oh,
have
sure.
one of them in my house and I use it now to work for my dehumidifier, but there was, and it drains perfectly fine, but there was a time when the first time I did that and it came all up and then there were dead mice down there. It was very awful, but now it works pretty well where we got the,
You get the blockage of the mice out.
right.
What's the state of the finishes? I can't remember, and maybe we should go there afterwards, but like, is it a clean plaster wall and you can't see where the foundation changes to?
Some of the wall is covered, some of it is, on the backside isn't.
Is it brick, I'm just trying to picture, is it concrete or?
Concrete.
Because the brick sits on the concrete all the way around. doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, brick above
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
concrete, yeah.
You
Your
know, there are
tenants
those
aren't gonna
systems
be
you
too
can log
happy if they have
into.
standing water in their offices.
I mean, personally, I think there's value in waterproofing the outside of that foundation to begin with. And if you're gonna do that, it's a perfect opportunity to make sure that the footing drain is intact and going someplace it's supposed to be and where you know it goes.
Yeah.
Does that sometimes cause breathability problems, or, I know we just did a bunch of waterproofing up the Opera House, and
The
everything got
building
worse.
Can be all ventilated, so
Yeah.
Yeah, that's,
that's what mechanical ventilation's for.
Well, it's gonna be a big number, but I guess, you know,
So
I
now
I
we're
agree with you, it's, you know, you're gonna rent out that space, it can't be having
Needs
it,
to be dry.
it needs to be
Yeah.
dry. It's just, I mean, this is what this document's perfect for, because you touch on every little thing, and you're like, I didn't even think about that, you know, it's like, oh my God.
but now we're talking about adding waterproofing. So, I mean, we're thinking,
You didn't have waterproofing in, you just were putting drains in.
we're gonna do drains
I
and.
thought that's what you
and,
said you were doing, yeah.
We would, well, at a minimum, we would damp proof when
Yeah,
you do it, because
I'm
why
not-
wouldn't
I'm
you?
not, yeah.
But, I mean, we could do it.
So if you're gonna dig it up anyway, why wouldn't you waterproof?
It's just, it really comes down to cost, but we can,
That's an expensive operation?
it can be.
If you like a membrane, you mean, or something?
We could do,
or
we would probably
spray
do,
on?
on an old concrete foundation, we'd probably do a liquid applied.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, it's just material cost is,
Then you're like belt and suspenders, you know, you have your drainage down there and you're waterproofed.
right, I mean, you could, if you damp proofed it, you could backfill it with something like a crushed stone and eliminate any of the hydrostatic pressure on the wall.
Yeah.
But crushed stone isn't cheap either, so it's,
So
Geofoam.
tough, because
not, stop it.
those aren't things you see either, so it's like,
Yeah,
Is this the kind of item that the cost estimator would this be broken out maybe in yours or the
Yeah.
cost, so we would see this as in, like, how much that costs to do?
Yeah, that would be a good request, I guess, to have this as a line item. I don't know if we can ask them that or not, but rather than just have this lumped in with all the site work, it'd be nice to know how much this is gonna cost.
Because then it allows us to look at that and weigh that up, but it also seems like then if we're weighing up the cost, but then there's this potential long-term problem. I mean, the goal of the project is to kind of like take care of MET
right.
from a functional standpoint, not looking for a beautiful thing at the end of it, but for something that's going to work and be sustained, and now's our chance to do it, right? So the only problem with getting a number is if the number looks big and we're concerned about the overall budget, which we should be, but then like if we sort of value engineering things out that seem like, I mean, I don't know, from trying to follow along, it sounds like kind of an important thing to try and get right.
It sounds important to me. I have no idea what it's about,
Yeah.
but it sounds
It
important.
sounds important to me too.
Yes.
If I was a basement tenant, then I think it would be important to me, and if it would be an
Yeah.
attractive thing to know, oh, that's been taken care of. I'm interested in leasing a basement, whereas if it hadn't been taken care of, I would think it would be less
First
attractive.
thing I'd
and-
ask as a tenant
Yes.
is this my,
Mhm.
is my stuff waterproof, is it
Waterproof.
safe down here, is it,
Yeah,
is there
I mean,
moisture, do I have
so
moisture issues?
When you're walking around that prospective tenant, you can say, yeah, we waterproof the whole thing, that's a good thing to say.
And it cost us a lot of money, but we
Yeah.
did it.
And we got, the new sewer pipe doesn't have any trees in it.
It sounds to me
I
like
mean,
we're,
sorry.
I'm sorry, it sounds to me like we agreed that we were probably gonna do it, but we wanna see the cost broken out.
Yeah, I think we can get the price for any of these things and make a
Okay.
final decision once you see.
Yep.
I mean, there's all.
Just so we can see that, like, would you say a line item?
Yeah, just so it's not lumped into all the site work, I guess.
And he said he was gonna do a line item estimate, right? So,
What's next?
Also, we probably need some kind of an evaluate. I don't know if we could get Smith and May to come back over and look more carefully, but if we do, we should have I know we have some opinion on what the issue is there, but we can't even be in a position to value engineer it out if we don't know.
I would say T.C. Hafford, you know, that
yeah, or
all things basement-y.
is it B Dry is the other one?
They did a great job on my basement.
Yeah, they do a good job, so they're pretty,
They're pretty yeah, they do the interior foundation drains. They'll cut the first
Yeah.
foot out and excavate it, stone it.
Yeah.
Maybe we could call them and just
look at it.
take a look. at some point.
I wouldn't mind going over there after this meeting too.
Mm.
Okay.
Landscape?
Yep.
Are we gonna kill a bunch of trees by cutting up by putting in all these new sewer mains and water lines and all this, I mean,
No,
no?
That's a good thing.
no, we're taking the sewer out the back, connecting to the new sanitary line that we're putting in through the middle school project. And we're taking the power and water through the new driveway entrance that we're putting in there. So we're leaving the trees in the front.
Okay,
And then we are required to put in additional plant material to meet the town's requirements for screening of butters and parking lots that we, through our site plan.
we thought it's, even if it's all existing stuff?
That's what I was thinking, like, why,
We can, they went through the ordinance again. I don't know that we found an out where we're gonna be going before that
Because
with
of
the change of use and all these other components. And it's about, it's not in this, I mean, it's
So
separate.
the landscaping stuff that's in there, you're thinking is required by the
Yes.
ordinance?
Where are you gonna plant the new trees?
There's,
oh, show me, yeah, at least some of them.
I mean, the
There
trees
we
are a
go.
nice thing, but,
What's new, right there?
I think, no, those are existing.
Okay, so it's in the island here, I guess, there's an island you have right here, this isn't the latest plan, but you had maybe trees in there and some shrubs along the back. Right here, the new plan has a place, a landscape island right along the back.
Yes,
Up against the building?
Yeah.
there's a handful of new trees. We have them in the island, the parking island. There's
Right
trees
here.
and shrubs. I can't remember what, we're required to have canopy trees and then low infill shrubs in there. So it's primarily along that parking and then on the kind of southwest corner of that parking lot and then the northwest corner of the parking lot.
There's a pretty good argument to make at the planning board that like, this is just reusing existing condition, but
right.
We won't know that though until we get to the
Planning board?
planning board. And
Well,
my,
maybe we can have it being like, well, the compromise will be a nice volunteer project. The Conservation Commission will go out there and, I mean,
Be nice.
I don't know how much
It'd
we're
be
talking-
nice if we do that, cut the cost, but
like we have a
can't-
town
can't
tree
plan on a
program.
volunteer thing for
And you're-
what we're putting.
I mean, really, the change of use doesn't happen until 2022 or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you can go out and fundraise for whatever it is, 10 trees and a bunch of shrubs.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people would be interested in doing
I think
that.
so. Right.
Get the price and we'll identify it and decide as we're building that
Call it
final
out as
budget.
a fundraiser.
Well, I think that's a good idea, actually.
I think about all the fundraising that was done for the high school. I mean, we wouldn't have had the Strom Auditorium and, and they raised a lot of money and people were very willing to do that because they felt it was important for the community.
You have to have a group willing to go out and make that happen.
Well, yeah, and it's a
Because
lot of work, a
the-
lot of
We
work.
still have a group there.
Right, and the
Yeah.
middle school is putting their group together, but they've had work for a long time and it didn't really gel.
Struggle
Really?
to get anybody to put
Yeah.
their hand up and say.
Really?
Well, I was on that committee for a little while, and it's just hard to fundraise for things like, you have to get people to fundraise for things they're excited about, and so,
Yeah, like the auditorium was a really big deal.
Yep.
People
Right.
wanted that.
So
there's
is
a
the
big
di-
tree group in
is
town,
the
I feel
direction
confident
Yeah,
about the.
yeah.
Are we looking to give the direction that we eliminate some of those things from this because we feel like it's
Has to be in, I think it has to be in this, but
Yeah.
it might be that when we get, because
The
we have to, it's
recommendation
gonna be the
is-
same thing as when we built the middle school budgets, that we'll have that construction line and then all the other stuff below it, and it might be that we take it from column A and put it in a reserve and take it off that bottom line.
okay?
So we have to account for all of those costs.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think the scope stays the same, it's just how we fund it.
Okay. Because the town's requiring it, is that what I?
That's our understanding, yes.
Okay.
But they don't require that Farley and Son do the planting, or that,
No.
so
No,
some.
that's only required in Rockport.
All the cemeteries and,
All right,
All right.
can't help you there.
All right, moving
So you had crossed off the testing on here,
Which one's that?
under the landscape.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, all those are is the shipping the box off to the UMaine co-op for $50, I think, so it's,
Yeah.
but,
What else?
Yeah. Just seems unnecessary, but.
Allison had one under plants. Seems like there are a lot of trees already
I
there.
think that's kind of what I already
Okay,
just
so we covered
covered.
that.
Already talked about the elevator thing.
Elevator. All right,
Oh,
Mike had, oh, sorry.
except for why are we already, and this is not to go back to the elevator, but whatever happened to the idea of pricing out the stairs, like
Yep.
leaving stairs and leaving, or leaving
Yeah, and that's
them?
what Mike and I were talking about before the meeting. Our structural engineer has spent a lot of time trying to find a way to make that work. And he doesn't think it's structurally viable within the parameters that we have, because that building, that stair tower is essentially built between two existing buildings on top of, around, and in. And as he started getting into it, it was a significant undertaking to get that to work. And it wasn't something that he thought was a viable option. So we struck that.
Okay.
So
Did
that's-
Carmen, do we know if Carmen looked at it at all?
I don't know. I was hoping she would, but.
So as of now, we don't see a path forward for that option.
Okay.
All right, you had Division 4 masonry and noted about wood for the elevator walls. And that would, I don't think that would be something that we would recommend. We've had a lot of elevator manufacturers even saying the steel frame shafted, unless you're doing super high rises, is not a good idea. There's just a lot of movement and support. And so
So what is the shaft constructor then, is it?
we typically build them out of CMU, so just concrete block.
We did one over in Rockport that was wood, and it was 2 layers of sheetrock wood, and they mounted the rails right to the wood.
Do they?
Is it cost that you're?
That's
it's
the
a
cost.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely more money to do CMU, but you'll have a better, at least in our opinion, a better long-term scenario.
It cuts down on the noise,
It definitely does, yeah.
CMU does. You know, elevators, especially that kind, are a little bit noisy.
They are, yeah.
We're looking at a building, I mean, if we do this, the building is gonna last like 100 years or something, right? I mean, it's gonna be like a really, really awesome building. Is that,
Well, we're gonna pay for it.
Yeah,
trying to get my pitch together a little bit.
we need to, I think we're gonna scare you with numbers,
Yeah, I'm already,
Yeah.
as you know, I'm already worked up.
even with what we're reducing tonight, I think we're gonna.
So what's your vision for the vestibule? That was the next one, like, is it like a
We were thinking.
aluminum frame, glass
Yeah,
glaze?
just a simple, inexpensive aluminum storefront, with a simple EPDM roof on top of it, so we do 4 columns and just wrap it, not try to mix in 3 or 4 different trades out there.
Okay. All right, I guess that seems pretty, maintenance-wise, that's better. I don't know cost-wise if that's more expensive, but,
It might be a little bit, but we're talking really small quantities. I think it's a 10 by 8 vestibule.
yeah.
So it's pretty small, order of magnitude.
It's just an airlock, basically.
What, going back to that masonry question from above, though, what's sort of the cost versus performance evaluation on that? Like, is that what you just said? Is that the thing we just talked about is not that much difference in cost? So in some ways, but the other one above, in terms of the shaft, there are benefits to having it at the CMU, but is it a significant cost? And do the performance improvements, like what's the lifetime expectancy of the shaft that you talked about compared to the CMU one?
I think
It's a good question.
it lasts just as long. I mean, I think there's a noise benefit to the CMU. I don't know, I mean, I think it could both do the performance. I don't know what the cost difference would be, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. We've never done one. I don't know what you have to do to support the rails on a wood shaft.
I don't know, I did it at the Shepherd Building there in Rockport.
Do you
It's
use
all
like
wood.
LVLs or?
Where we had framing coming into it, yeah, where it was headed off framing.
Yeah.
But that was just conventional, normal stuff. But it was made out of 2x6s,
Hmm.
you know, so. I don't know, maybe you could ask your structural engineer, what he thinks.
Yep, I will. ask our elevator guru too.
I think we did it over there for cost savings. You'd mentioned concrete-filled steel bollards may be required for site improvements. I just was
Did
touching.
you see any? I didn't look for them.
I didn't see any, and I know if I was the cost estimator, I'm like, well, where are they? So if you could just strike that.
Sure.
I can't imagine why we need them. You know,
What are concrete-filled steel bollards?
it's so you don't run
Drive
into
your car
stuff.
into stuff.
Yeah. And you have granite
Oh.
curbs, so that'll keep people away from where they need to be.
Okay. Let's see, the next one that you had was under Division 1.
Yeah, they got a couple of-
So you had crossed out not, or to use the basement as the contractor office, which that's
Save some,
save a couple bucks.
general condition stuff.
Yeah. Okay,
So that's doable.
it's doable. They won't like it, but they'll do it. I mean, it's,
I think they will
There's-
like it,
there's-
actually.
Who's they?
The contractor.
Oh, okay.
Rather than hauling in a trailer or something.
yeah, I mean, it would be a small trailer that they would save, and save you a couple $1,000 easily. I mean,
Wait till they see that beautiful basement, they're gonna be thrilled. The kitchen and the.
we've got different perspectives on that basement.
Yeah.
Thing is, they're not gonna wanna do that until it's waterproof.
There's the priority. First on the list.
Yeah, tell them work fast.
Get a lot of ground.
They can
We're gonna
monitor
keep
the
going.
water infiltration while they're down there.
Let me see.
Freeze it, have penguins.
You want me to move this?
No, that's all right, just,
You
just,
don't
you
think
just,
so?
It's a
I think you both had something under Division
Freezes the
4.
basement and has penguins.
Additional repairs are required following demolition of the existing stair and elevator tower, which we just talked about. Oh, a spelling mistake. Let me get that fixed.
so, about the stairs, I guess I'm ready to give up on keeping the existing stairs. I'd thought of an idea about, you talked about those clearances. I thought of an idea of moving the doorways out into the hall and bumping out into the classroom, so you
Yep.
could get the clearances and still have the separation. And you could actually use both of them,
Yeah, there's other things when you move that 1 hour rated wall. I guess you'd be doing it all 3 floors, which would help.
Yeah.
It's the. Anyways.
And I had an idea of like having the handicap spots out in the back in these angled spaces, basically right here. If you think about the way this elevator works now, right? You come in to the lobby, you go down into the cafeteria, and so that cafeteria floor is about the same elevation as the grade in the back, the playground area. So if you could keep all this, you put the handicap spaces here, you have a little sidewalk, and you come in a door, a lobby that gets you into that elevator at the cafeteria elevation, so that's your handicap accessible into the building. And then if you could have that solution on every floor, you just solve that, what do you call it, the separation distance or the
Yeah, it's your use of
clearances, right?
I think you'd have a hard time getting that by the fire marshal. We'd have to meet with them because you've created 2 different experiences for
Yeah.
accessible, handicapped people. They tend to not, especially when you're doing a big renovation, like you to send them to the back of the house.
Yeah, I know.
But again, that would be something we'd have to talk to them, but I'm not sure it's a.
That's what I had heard from talking to several contractors, that it was really important, like all these things where we say, oh, well, because of code this, because of code that it really all comes down to the fire marshal, and that the first thing we should have done was to get in line with the fire marshal so we can go through and say, well, this is a historic building, can we do this, can we do this, can we do this, and that a lot of the time.
I wouldn't say a lot of the time. I think contractors make it sound rosy. That's not been my experience. Plus, it doesn't work structurally, so it's kind of a moot point at this.
Mike,
Right.
what you just said, talking about putting the elevator on the right side of the building as I look at it on that picture.
Well, leaving it where it is. Yeah.
Because the only thing I just thinking back to in these meetings, I've heard board members say, like, they don't want that to happen. So, like, we ultimately have to go through the board, who I don't get the sense would support that idea.
Right.
So, I'm less technically invested, and I'm I hear
I think
you.
it's technically possible, that's the problem, and it just kills me because we're building this whole other shaft and whole other staircase. So that would be my best wish, if we could do that. I can
Mine
fall
too.
back from that, and I just wanted to kind of present one more thing, if I could, and see what you think about this, Tyler. And I'm gonna leave these plans laid down here. So, in thinking about the top floor, okay, which is office space, right? The problem up here, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm out of my league here, and just nip me right in the butt if I'm way off track here. The issue is you need 75-foot travel distance, right, to an,
Two things, the travel distance and then your dead end corridor,
okay, how much is the dead end corridor?
20 feet.
So you can't, if there's any egress in the center of this thing, you can't go more than 20 feet to a dead end corridor.
Correct.
And there's no leeway because it's an existing condition.
I don't believe, I will double check that for you, but I
So-
don't believe that there's any leeway on the dead end corridor.
That just seems
If
crazy.
it were on the
to me.
historic register, though,
I don't think
it
that-
would all,
I don't think so. The existing building code specifically addresses the travel distance. But
Right, 75
they
feet.
do not address the dead end,
Right,
which means you go to
right, so
the IBC. But I'll
just
check it for you.
follow my train of thought here for a second. If to solve the 75 feet on the top floor where the offices are gonna be, you take this back stair, which leads you down and out, ultimately to the playground side. You close the door off where it is and you slide the door down towards this way so you can solve that 75-foot problem. Then you could eliminate this stair, okay? You still keep the stair over by the elevator, okay? So now go down a floor, and you're saying, okay, well, what do we do down a floor? You go down a floor, this is the Zenith, right? Well, the Zenith's on the first floor, so they are very close to grade out here, you
Yeah,
know,
that's fine.
6 feet or so, but it is, so the floor's up here and the grade's down here, right? It's halfway in between the first floor and the basement. So you put another fire door here and in the hallway you go down. I don't know if the widths work here, Tyler, but.
Yeah, it would only be one, you'd lose space in the basement, but it would only
Yeah,
be one.
one half a story down, right? You go half a story down, now you're at grade. You bust out the wall to a pad, it's just an emergency exit, right?
We've got an opening there now already. So.
Right, and then if there's room here, if there's not room here, you could go this way, but if there's room here, you turn around and you could have a flight of stairs back down to the basement, so that the basement has a fire door and they go just up a half a story and out. So now you've eliminated, you do have some work to do on the basement and first floor, but you've eliminated the stair tower from,
You just eliminated 3 columns as well.
okay, well,
But
you could have a stair going beside the columns,
Yeah.
you know.
the one thing, and we'd have to see how admin would feel about it, is the only thing I could think of on the second floor would be to turn that entire end into one big open office. So that it's no longer a dead end, it's one big
You
space.
get a copy room, a break room.
Well, we'd have to relay out the floor, and that
What
would
are you
be,
trying to accomplish with that,
I'm
Mike?
trying to get rid of a stair tower, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
this place
Yeah.
will have 4 sets of stairs in it.
Yeah,
You know, and
Okay.
and it's all because of this travel distance thing, you know,
I got you.
and
And that all has to do with fire code.
Yes.
yeah, and I think there is a point, the fact this is a historic building, I think gives you some leeway in some instances.
IEBC addresses the historic, but I think that it calls, you have to be on a
Registered,
list
yeah.
either nationally or by SHPO.
But I think you could get on the list, I think this building would qualify.
it says, usually what it is, here it says registered or eligible to be registered, also on the state or national register of historic places, designated as a historic property under local or state designation law or survey. So there's actually if there's something that even the town can do
To say this is.
to start the process.
But how
rolling
long
more.
does that take? And
No, it doesn't take long.
oh, it doesn't really.
I don't think so.
They have to be declared
Especially if it's a
eligible for
local
listing.
thing, you know?
Right.
Really?
My question would be, and I like historic preservation, my brother-in-law works in historic preservation in Washington DC in the Office of the Interior, but when you start doing that, you start creating other things that you can and can't do. And I just worry, okay, we're trying to solve one problem by getting on a list, which is those corridor links, what are the implications on other things? Or maybe there aren't any.
I don't know.
It's usually about changing the appearance of the building from the
Facades.
exterior.
Yeah.
Depends.
Well,
But it
Depends
does
on the
depend a
location.
we're
lot.
gonna put
Sometimes
on
they get
a
into
metal
the
and glass
interior.
vestibule on a historic preservation building? Or are we gonna be required to put on something more historically?
No, they actually would rather you tack on stuff that doesn't look like they.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the historic
So I think
preservation
you-
guidelines
Right.
say if you do an addition, that you don't try to replicate or mimic the historic nature of the building, that
That it looked different?
it looks
So
different.
to sum up my idea, it would take the full stair tower away and it
Build
would
a
just,
half
you build a half a flight down and a half a flight up.
Well, I'll take a look, I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, but I'll take a look at that upper floor. I mean, if we can, I have no problem doing that if we can make it work. It's
Yeah.
a,
Bob,
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to leave at 6:30, so I'll write the minutes until I leave and then it'll be yours.
That's fine.
And that doesn't go afoul of what the school board wanted, because it'd still be just an egress door out to
yeah,
a
exactly.
pad.
There's gonna be one there regardless.
Yeah.
So,
So, I just thought it was a way to just kind of,
If we
hem in
can-
that scope of that stairwell.
I'm happy to delete stairs. I agree, there's a lot of stairs in this building.
Yeah,
And the most significant thing about that is a cost-saving measure,
yeah.
right?
But still moving the elevator. I mean,
No, the
You
other,
haven't
yeah, the
changed that.
elevator, yeah. I mean,
okay, so this is
I've
just
given
about
up on
this-
that, I guess.
Okay.
Uh,
Surrender.
You hung in a long time.
Yeah, you did.
Kills me.
Yeah, I feel the same way about the elevator.
Oh, that thing was so oddly constructed. It's not been,
It was patched.
it was not from lack of effort, so.
Let that be noted in minutes.
I think it's noted in many minutes.
Yeah.
How many more things you got? Because I am running.
All right,
Yeah.
that was a major one of mine, I don't know where we are.
I think the last big thing, and we can skim through this real quick, it was the discussion about the windows. And this was one that I know we've talked about a lot, and I'm not sure that, and maybe I missed it, that we ever came to a clear consensus. That we've talked about leaving them there because we're going to be installing air conditioning. We've talked about possibly trying to repair some of them. We've talked about replacing them. And that would be something I would like some clarification on with us. So I think that they likely would meet the minimum requirements of the energy code. They
Yep.
likely are not going to function as operable windows in their current condition. So I think where we're air conditioning this building, we just want to make sure everyone's aware that if they're not operable, that you're going to be relying on mechanical ventilation year round, which is okay, but it will add money for operation costs on both of your shoulder months. So I guess we just have to compare it to.
The trade-off is what it would cost to replace all those windows, which
Right,
would be.
and we can get the price, break it down. I mean, those are pretty standard units. All of the uppers are all the same size, so we can get that and discuss it. But I just want to make sure that we know what the implications are, and if you can just tell me what the.
So how, like, with the controls, do you just shut the AC off or heat? I mean, what's gonna happen is the AC will be on and someone will lift open the window, or the
We-
heat will be on and someone will lift open the
Yeah,
window.
we've done actually some very simple versions of this, and granted, some of it comes down to training people in the building. It's always going to have that, regardless. So we did one at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and they called it the nice day switch. So simple control especially in a building like this, in the lobby, the light comes on. Hey, it's not very humid out. The temperature's nice. Go ahead and open the windows. And when they did that, the AC shut off. So it was a simple control.
That's interesting.
So they press the nice day switch
Yep.
and then they can
And
open
then
the
they-
windows.
And that one had some other whistles, and we had some passive ventilation going on that did
Yeah.
other things.
I like that.
But it's something to think about, that we're gonna have a control system in the building anyways, and one more point, and a switch is not big bucks, but it's just something to think about, and I'm
And
fine either way that you guys decide to go.
And I don't know the history of these windows, and I know some people, Carol was saying that they're hard to open.
Oh, they're brutal.
When we were walking around looking at the masonry, we were standing there and someone walked up and just went whoosh, like
So
looking
I
at
know,
the
I've
sky.
opened
So
windows in there and without
A lot of
issue.
them are really, my memories are really hard, especially if you're reaching over something. I had teachers that couldn't open the windows, I
Yeah.
would go down and open them for them. They were put in the late 80s. We did the whole building, and it was, at that time, it was a significant expense. It was over $100,000. And I'm sure it would be 3 times times that now to replace those
It's
windows.
a lot of windows, so, and maybe we're
So-
selective with it.
So I'm thinking if that might be, if we're gonna put the ventilation in anyway, let's leave those windows the way they are and tell people don't open them.
Yeah, and $100,000 or whatever it is a lot of energy. I mean, it may never pay for itself, but it's occupant health, and
Yeah.
I mean, people like opening the windows in Maine if you can, but again, it's a trade-off.
Yeah, I remember,
mean, we have the opportunity to get the price, see what the cost
well,
is.
I remember the discussion being that I thought we had talked about sealing the windows
Yeah.
and that we would run with, you know,
AC.
ventilation system. But if we can, I think do a comparison on that to understand, because I think, you know, the point that Allison brings up often is, you know, somebody's gonna ask and say, well,
Yeah.
wait, what about this? And if we can say, we looked at this.
Yeah, it was
Here's the
$100,000.
trade-off, and that's a pretty big trade-off. I want to be able to defend it if that's.
It's not like we're going from single pane to double pane.
No, they're already,
You know, they're already double pane.
That's what's a little bit offensive to some of the people that have been in the community for a long time. They already remember one round of, well, we did this big window upgrade on
Yeah.
that building, so.
Ask them how many times they've replaced their car since then.
and
I
that's the
mean,
thing.
the windows in my house are 125 years old and I reglazed them. And so there's a whole gamut of.
With that cost, if we get the cost of the windows, then there's that sort of the energy trade-off that they probably wouldn't be as energy efficient as replacing them. Is it easy to generate some kind of future forecast of the difference between those two so we can truly compare?
I would say not easily. I mean,
Okay.
we haven't built an energy model of the building. It's not.
Okay. But if it came back at whatever the
It
numbers
would
you're
have to, it
throwing
would be
out,
negligible, I think, because
The U value is not going to change.
it's
We
already
might
a
go from
double
like
pane window.
So
we might go
it
from
probably-
like 0.5 to a 0.3.
right? So we, because I'm not thinking like to the dollar and cent. I'm just thinking if it's 150 grand for the
There is some
windows,
glass.
we're not gonna. Right, but that's, it sounds like
Space
we.
over here.
So if you like life cycle, that 50% performance difference over 20 or 30 years, it's gonna be a big number.
50% performance difference?
From going to
Going
from
to a
point-
gas filled to
Yes.
from what's there now.
I know, but then what happens is they end up breaking, and then you have to replace the whole window every time there's a pane that's like, oh, the gasket went on that one, and then I don't think it ends up.
Do they-
We have really fancy windows at the Opera House, and they're like, you know, one gasket goes and the whole thing gets replaced.
Keith, what's your experience with these windows been the last 10 years?
We have probably spent $12,000 to $15,000 getting them to,
Doing what?
trying to, we finally tracked down a vendor, the vendor,
Yeah,
who had sent service people here, and
just to make them easy to operate?
we've replaced a whole bunch of
Has
the
that worked?
operators. It does for a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. It does for a bit.
But what we're saying is, sorry, you don't.
Well, I was just gonna say that if those windows stay, the only way I would support those windows staying would be if they were fixed in place and completely sealed, and somebody could not open them at that point. We'd have to make them so they could not be opened.
Why?
Because if they're not working right, they're dangerous.
If they come down, those windows are super heavy. If they ever come down fast, they'd take your finger off.
And they do, yeah. I mean,
They
that's,
really would. I mean, they were a poor choice of windows when we made the decision in the late 80s, because they're too big and too heavy. And they needed to be fixed pane for like 3/4 of it, and then some other kind of an opening down below
Yeah.
would have been a better solution. And we knew that about 5 years after we did it, but we were going on our best thinking at the time. And we were just coming off some of the energy stuff. For years, we had the windows in these buildings blocked off. I mean, they were blocked off halfway down as energy savings back in the 70s through there. And I don't know if we blocked some. I think we might have blocked, some of those might have been blocked too, but that was before.
probably late 70s, early 80s,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's happening to the windows in this school during demolition?
Contractor owns them. Contractor owns the building.
I didn't know if they said, because we got the demolition permit from the town and they weren't included on any kind of thing that they were salvaging.
There's not going to be much salvaged in this building.
We-
So,
But Tyler,
Recycled.
do you feel like you have a direction on this coming away from the
We
meeting?
just replaced these windows like 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Hmm?
Wasn't it just like 10 years ago that we replaced windows in this, in part of this school?
we reinstalled some windows that had been replaced in the 90s because they were literally falling out. Literally.
So I think
Taylor, are you set?
we're gonna get the price and we'll make a final decision later.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Is that,
Yeah.
Yes.
that's what I heard, all right.
Yeah,
I think so.
that's good.
The big thing for me is the thermal, is the insulation. Because when I've talked to other people that have renovated historic buildings, they've said they didn't do that and they met the energy code with the lighting, and that it's
Yeah,
not
I
a good idea to do the insulation because of all these different reasons, and
I spent a lot of time yesterday going through the energy code, and I did not see a provision that allowed offsetting it.
so maybe if we could talk to, I certainly don't understand it like you do, but talking to Tyler Smith was really interesting, how they did 16 Baby Street, and they met the energy code for that building, and did it with, he was like, oh, you get so many points for the lighting that,
Yeah, I went through, I mean, there isn't, from what I could read through that yesterday, there isn't a provision to do better lighting to offset insulation.
One way I know that you can get around some of it is that if you, like, I was in a historic building in Portland, and they wanted exposed brick as a look.
Yeah.
And of course, if you expose the exterior wall brick, there's no insulation there, right? So what they did is they created like a chair rail. From the chair rail down, they insulated with this R value, and the lesser R value of the existing, and the average gave them the full R value.
I think I sent you the reference to there's a calculation that you can do to meet the whole,
Right.
but
I don't know, I just didn't follow it. I was just hoping there was some out on this existing building code, but,
well, that one just sends you to the IECC.
I see.
here it says, in the following cases, this is on the U.S. Department of Energy site, in the following cases, historic buildings are considered exempt from provisions of the energy code. However, we recommend always confirming with state or local jurisdiction, and it goes through those same lists of eligible for listing on the National Register. Same thing with the local.
I can't support not insulating that building, and I don't think the board would. I mean, the board supported spending extra money to put in a more sustainable heating system in the new middle school. Why are they gonna do?
You know what the energy
Why are
conservation.
they gonna support something other
I forgot, I
than
meant to bring it on my desk.
doing the best we can in this building?
Well, there's, money is a resource too, and so if, depending on how much money we can save, we looked at putting solar panels on the roof up there, or having a solar farm somewhere, or,
Yes, but the first thing you do is not buy more energy, you save energy.
but if we can generate energy on that roof, or if
But that.
you look at all the
that's-
materials, there's an energy cost of new construction also. So you can't just ignore the cost of the energy carbon footprint of all of those materials that you're adding to the building, all the tearing out that we have to do, all the demolition, all the stuff that's gonna end up in our landfill because we're tearing apart those walls.
We don't necessarily have to tear those walls apart to fill them with foam.
How are we gonna, it just seems to me that since the issues with the water infiltration are so complex right now, that it doesn't make any sense to add insulation when we're not quite sure. At least now, you can kind of see, oh, it's coming in right here, but you cover all that up, and we haven't figured out the masonry conundrum.
Well, you deal with your masonry issues and do a water test to make sure it's
Yeah, you have to,
all done right, and then you insulate.
So
I think
just to
that
be
was
clear, we're
Sam's
demoing
point as
all
well.
the exterior walls, right? That's the scope?
yes.
Oh, the exterior walls?
The interior.
The interior.
Finishes of the exterior walls.
We're not taking the walls down.
Yeah,
It's
the interior finishes of
I
the
got
exterior
scoop
walls.
on, sorry folks.
I'm
So
gonna-
this really comes down to the fact, if you can get on,
Oh, thank you.
if you can get onto the historic list, then you can be exempt.
Exempt from
The energy
insulation.
Well,
Energy code.
see, the energy code, the administrative section is not well written, so it almost contradicts itself in places. Because it says, you know, if there's something more, if there's a conflict between the general requirements, then you have to do the more strict of the two, and then when you get into this, it tells you if you're changing the space conditioning that you have to do. So it's,
Well, when I was talking before about how long this would take to get on the historic register, and you said not
I
long,
don't
but
think so.
but you have to go through all of these specifics, and it seems to me
This is
that it would
different.
take.
This is
Oh, it
It can
is?
take a
Yeah.
long time to get actually on, but sometimes, like right now, there's for the DOT project, it's like there are all these places that we didn't even realize that they're like eligible for listing that, and I don't even know exactly what that means, but there are a variety of pathways to it. So to get it officially listed is like a year and a half, but
I didn't think it was that long.
if
But, yeah.
it just depends
But
on
we're looking at a presentation in the next few weeks.
so this is where it would have been helpful to have the school board people here, because
Yeah.
if they're not gonna support
Right.
moving a building forward,
We
that,
need to know that, right?
because we were given directive to
I
not
remember
compromise
from the
any of the energy performance through the value management of the
Probably
middle
worn
school.
out.
They selected nothing that would, and they actually, you know, we recommended deleting things like sunshades and other stuff, and they put them back in because that was our mandate. So I'm not sure what they feel about this, but I don't know, maybe we could poll them offline.
Yeah, I'll reach out to them. My sense is if that's the way they feel about the new school, I
I
would
just-
question whether or not they would feel differently about it.
Right, I just don't know.
You can imagine that it's a whole different scope to demo all of the interior finishes of the exterior walls of this whole building.
There's a huge energy implication of all that. People love to talk about, oh, we're going to build this great new school and it's going to be airtight. But when you rip down and destroy something, there's also, I mean, there's a carbon footprint of new construction. And it takes like 40 years in most cases to actually offset the cost. Nobody talks about all the trucks. With this new school, they're going to be truckload after truckload going to Juniper Ridge. They're not even taking it to our landfill right here. They didn't even try. They just, I mean, it almost makes me like cry to think about we're just filling up state-owned landfills with just all this. It's not even going to be sorted because they let you put anything in Juniper Ridge. It's just.
Alison, how does that impact the topic for discussion on the MET building?
Because if we're going to say, well, we're either going to tear down the building or we're going to insulate it to the very best possible standard that's going to add so much demolition and cost to the whole thing that it's not going to, nobody's going to be able to afford it.
You know,
I don't think people are going to vote for this.
I look at this facade and it's so much window and so little wall, you know.
Right. What are we really
And
doing?
I can't remember because I don't know the building well enough, but like, is there a lot of detail on the inside? Like, if you rip everything down, how hard is it to recreate that? Like, or are you just gonna do
It's not- I don't-
sheetrock corners or?
Yeah, we do. There's not a lot of detail, and I think it's all unit ventilators at the edge, right?
We're going to get into lead paint and all
Oh,
the
there's no
underneath
unit
all
ventilators
the
anymore,
trim
it used
work.
to be.
Yeah, I mean, to
What
demo
is-
it, you're gonna have to do abatement, lead paint, abatement first.
I mean, these are the walls. Like, what are we really insulating?
And there isn't much there. I mean, if you look at the facade, I mean, in between the windows is barely anything. It's just, you know, there's underneath the windows and,
Sounds like we need to poll your school board.
yeah, they don't even have their, I mean, the members on this committee had their head in it, but the rest of the school board
Right, so I feel like it's asking.
hasn't had their head in this, but.
Well, they're gonna get there. I mean, they have to get their head into it if we're gonna put something forward in November. I mean, that's.
Have you talked to any
I haven't.
of them? No. I was just curious.
I mean, most of the exterior walls are like, it's,
Yeah, it's a lot of glass. But just keep in mind, if you're gonna do this, someone's gonna have to take the charge to get this on the list.
on what list?
this
Oh, on
door-
the-
Historic.
Yes.
All right,
So-
I'll reach out to Marcia, Carol, and Pete
Just-
regarding this.
Just know, and if you don't get on the list, that you won't have the exceptions. So that's the gamble.
Can you just?
Well, that's
can
what we
you
need
talk through
clarity on.
What that means, so can you just explain what that means again? Because we've gone so far in the weeds, I need us to kind of back up
So,
again, because I'm.
The exception to not meeting the energy code is that you are on either a national or state recognized, I think it says lawful list.
Yeah.
It says local too, which is the part that I don't understand. Like if our,
I saw that open.
It's the historic preservation, right?
It says local or state designation law or survey. So it's not just going to be the town saying, yeah, we think it's historic, that you would have to put an overlay zone. That's what they're going to refer to. So historic preservation
or if we
district.
had a historic commission, if our,
District, sometimes
if our
it's historic districts.
Right, you could
committee
do-
was a commission.
But it's going to be something, it's not just going to be a quick vote of the select board saying, yeah, this building's historic.
No,
It's
the
going to
select
be,
board doesn't get to decide anything.
so it's going to be
No power.
it's going to be a process.
So, to make sure I understand correctly, if you don't mind me asking again, so if we don't get on that list, we have to meet the, what's
It's energy
The
conservation.
Energy
energy
conservation code, right? And the only way to meet that code is to fully
Insulate.
insulate the walls. So then it's like if we're not on the list, it's a non-negotiable. You have to insulate, and maybe there are variations of insulation we can do at different cost points, but like we have to do more insulation. That's going to cost a lot, right? So the only option is to get on that register. Is to have another alternative and not meet.
Well, I'd like to know, I think it would be worthwhile to talk to the Smiths about how they just did a major renovation of a building and they met the energy code but did not insulate those walls, and they had a lot of
They
reasons
are
for
a
it.
historic building too.
They decided not to go.
They didn't use tax credits, but they could have. It's a historic building. It's in the historic district.
I don't think that one is, because
It's
it
not
was-
part of the fire district.
Right,
Oh.
and I think they
What
decided to
about,
modify too
what
much.
about leaving what's there in place, so you don't have all that demo cost?
Just go over it.
You go over it.
It shouldn't be an issue.
It does concern me about the lead too, on all that, that's where the lead would be, is all in that trim work and getting in the,
Well, it would be concealed and covered.
right, so that would be a way around it rather than,
And the big expense is having to demo the whole thing. Building another wall inside, it takes up into, square footage, but it's not huge. I don't know.
Yeah,
It depends
I was
on what
I
gonna
mean, I
you.
don't know why you couldn't foam it in place.
I don't know how much, well, is it just
How much there?
fairing strips on the brick, so it's.
No, it's framed, if I remember right.
Oh,
Let's do a pourable.
well, that's a good point. That would work.
Say again?
Just foam it in place, it's two part.
I was under the impression it was just a
Hose.
little tiny
Couple
little
holes
gap.
what I
in the
thought
wall.
Right. Oh, I
Hose
see what
and
you're
fill
saying.
it.
I see what you're
I
saying.
thought we talked about that in a previous meeting, exactly like you just said it.
I don't remember
I
that.
don't remember that.
Is there any place that we can see that? Or Probably not.
Not right now, no.
I think, isn't there down in the basement, you can kind of look up in that one,
Anyway, if
Alright,
that's,
so why don't
so
we,
what are we gonna put for the cost estimate then? I mean, right now you have a demo and rebuild walls and insulate in some manner, right?
yes. Yeah, when we redo it, we usually hold the stud off
To
2
leave an air
inches so
gap.
that,
Yeah.
so we let the foam go through continuously, and you don't have thermal breaks,
But Mike, the thing you were just talking about is the idea of just putting the insulation and then like you sheetrock the inside so
Yeah.
it comes into the room, but it's a way to put insulation in. And it,
I mean, think about it, you're buying insulation, you're buying some kind of framing, you're buying a sheetrock finish. The other cost is demoing what's there. If you don't have to demo what's there, you save the demo at least. But if you could pour in or do some kind of blow in, or if the cavity is there and not in big enough to insulate, then that's the way to go. Then you leave your finishes. I mean, you have holes,
yeah, patch
but
them.
you patch them. And that's the absolute way to go if that's the case. I didn't realize that.
but I read this thing about different ways of insulating old buildings, and some of it said that with a lot of old buildings now, because of the heating system, it dries and it reaches like full drying, it completely dries out, but then when you insulate, it no longer gets to the point where it completely dries out in between wet
Right.
cycles,
And then it freezes and thaws.
and they had 2 different ways of doing it, and it was like, okay, well, and there are all these models which you're probably aware of.
It's all to do with the moisture absorption rate of the
Right.
masonry that's in place, and the only way to check that it's hygromatic tube. So they put a tube on the outside of the building. You pour water and you watch how much of it's absorbed over time. It's not very high tech. It's just literally a tube with water, and you time it. So it's something.
But if you're foaming in place, it's a closed cell foam, so.
But what the challenge is multi-wife masonry construction is that you've eliminated that ability for moisture to travel all the way through the wall back, because there's no vapor barriers in that existing thing. So,
But the foam becomes your vapor barrier.
right. But introducing a vapor barrier on one side is the concern,
Yeah.
because you've eliminated the path for
Water
if
escape.
moisture can get into that third wife,
Oh, I see, on
that
the
it can't get
outside.
out. It would never completely dry out just from evaporative action on the outside. So that's the challenge.
So leaving an air gap is the thought process.
Yes.
All right, so I can still contact our 3 committee members who are members of the board, ask them about, their sense on the historic preservation component, if that's,
Just to avoid the energy code.
that helps get us that exclusion. I can share that with you guys as soon as I speak with them, and I'll do that right away.
Should somebody call main preservation and ask if there's, I think we need a little bit of clarity on the different, I'm happy to do that if
I
there's
think that's worth the time, for sure, just to understand
like
whether or
whether
not
it has
that's,
to be fully listed or
Yeah,
what
well,
the pathway.
what's that process, to understand whether or not it's even viable.
What's gonna go in your document then?
I don't
You
know.
don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, I would say we'll leave it what's in there, and if you get something next week that I'm not here, just send your estimator, strike section, whatever it is in Division 7, do this instead. I mean, it doesn't have
Can
to
we agree that we don't want a demo? I mean, could we go that route at this point, like?
Yeah, as long as there's, I mean, it wouldn't be our ideal, and makes me a little nervous, but yeah, I mean, that's,
but it's-
Sorry.
Insulation without demo, the Keith's,
Either
Approach
Keith's
is
way or, the other.
or building on top.
yeah, I'm just not, I would feel fine with that. I mean, it's a little bit of a risk if you get in there and it's a very porous brick and it sucks water all the way back through. You're not gonna wanna put a foam insulation up against the brick. I mean, that's just,
Right. Or any kind of insulation against the brick.
well, they have some newer installations that we've used on some historic preservation, but again, you have to demo that wall out. There's more of like a dense packed cellulose that has, they call it a smart membrane, so that it will let moisture out but not, it's
Yeah.
one directional.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are other things if we demo it that give you better options, but
So presumably the system works pretty good now, so the option of doing everything on the inside of what's there, isn't that a good option?
yeah, that would certainly.
But doesn't the air from the inside isn't that part of the full drying process?
If we built another stud wall in front of it, you would rely on the air,
Oh, there'd still
the
be
air
an air
cavity
gap,
within the
okay.
wall as your evaporative air space, and it would do what it's doing now.
Do we have any kind of calculation on, like, obviously in some buildings, insulating makes a huge difference because the whole thing is a wall, but in cases where there's very little actual, I'm a little concerned about asking the school board for their input without having them have been a part of this conversation, or we need to understand what we're gaining energy conservation wise
We have
by
not done an entry
insulation.
model on this building.
I think the question of the school board is,
Do they support pursuing
yeah,
historic
if
register?
if we pursue placing this on some kind of historic register, it would allow us to have, be exempt from the energy code, which would give us flexibility in insulating the exterior walls.
Yeah, I just don't want,
I
I care about the environment too. It feels like that question could easily be like, what? They don't care about the environment. They just
No.
want to. It's a complex thing and not necessarily a loser for the environment. So
well, I think if I'm a school board member, my first question is going to be, okay, so what's the process involved for getting on the
Yeah.
list?
right.
And, I'm going to tell them that you're going to dig into that, and since you get some information, you can let everybody know
Yeah.
as quickly as
I'll try to have
as you
something
know.
on that by the end of the day tomorrow.
Otherwise, there are some options that we can explore that we've talked about here in terms of leaving the walls in place that I think I should share with them. Whether we shoot it into the cavity or we create another wall on the interior as well.
It
Correct.
sounded like there was it sounded like there was unknowns around the shooting it into the cavity. There are unknowns around that. So the only kind of known thing
Would be
that
to,
we can basically say with the knowledge at our disposal is doing that, build the extra wall inside and insulate that. I think.
Yeah, the only
Well, I think that's what I heard.
the only thing that we just have to be careful is that we're not creating a cavity where we're going to trap or have condensation.
Right.
So it's
Well, and that was the other piece, you know, when we met with Sam, you know, he was talking about wanting to go in and test, you know, target areas specific to moisture, and then how does that impact what we're trying to
Yeah.
do here?
yeah, insulating old buildings is hard.
I know it's just nice in the opera house, at least you kind of see where, oh, we've got that water problem again. You know, it's. Would you be willing to talk to Tyler Smith about,
I'm not going to have time to talk to
Okay.
Tyler tomorrow.
or if he wrote something up about how they met the energy code, or?
Yeah, if he gets it to me, or tomorrow is just a hell day, the
Okay.
last day before vacation. So I'm just going to be honest that probably not going to get to it.
Okay.
So.
I think that's
Okay.
fair, Tyler.
that's fair.
Okay.
So we still don't know what you're gonna put in there though, right?
I think we've got a couple options, and I think what we should do is just have you guys do the little bit of legwork, and you don't need me to write up that 2-paragraph thing to go in here. You can take the language that we have in here and tweak it. Just issue it to them as an addendum to the basis of design.
Okay, and then I can explain to Bruce, you know, what that issue is.
How much of our cost estimator budget have we eaten up? Wasn't there a specific amount that was it $10,000 or something, or?
I think it was 10.
I thought
For
so
what,
too,
like
and
a-
we're way
Well
under.
under it.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah, I don't,
So I was just saying, we don't need to maybe be too concerned about adding things that might create a little bit of extra work
no, it
for
was
the
the timing
cost
for
estimate.
him. He wanted
Yeah.
like a clean thing so he could do his work.
Right.
He's delivering
Is
this
it
to us
timing
next
it?
week, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have time to blow your budget.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about blowing the budget, I was just saying, okay, we should, but it's his time that is the issue, not,
right.
okay.
Yeah, it's, if you work 24/7 for the next 2 weeks, you wouldn't blow your budget.
Right, so I was saying maybe if he does have time, we could be liberal with saying, and can you find out how much this would cost, and this would cost, and this would cost?
Yeah, just keep, I mean,
All
that
right,
will take
any
time.
other, Tyler, do you feel like you've got enough?
I mean, the other ones that we had questions were like, about the doors, I mean.
Oh,
we
sound
yeah.
paneling, things
Yeah,
like
I
that,
did
like the
have-
ceiling, why can't we keep the ceiling in the classrooms?
I guess it depends on how much you're willing to have exposed with ductwork and piping and conduits, and so that's a kind of like the level of finish and quality. If you're okay with, you know, this kind of stuff all over the place and sprinkler heads exposed, and we get rid of the ceilings. I
But so
would
are we looking at a drop seal, or with the sound paneling, that's a drop ceiling, right?
There's two different things. The SAT ceiling, what we would do is we'd pick the kind of the high point, and it'd be similar to what we have in the classroom, and slope it down to a lower point, so that gives us a path to run all of the utilities and stuff in that ceiling. So we slope them, like in the new school, they'll slope from 9 feet to 11 feet, so that you don't,
So it won't be a flat ceiling?
no,
It'll be like,
be sloped.
so like,
Like a mini vaulted ceiling?
that sounds like it won't look good.
It's gonna look fantastic. We do it all over the place.
I'm just, because the windows go all the way to the top of the ceiling
Correct.
currently. So
like
this,
this.
that'll, over here it'll be flush and then it'll go angled.
Yep.
Like in a short distance, just like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would go across the whole length of the room.
Oh,
a foot or two.
oh.
And then that way, all of your like spiral duct and everything else gets put
In the deep part.
In the deep part, and then you keep the high windows on the
I've
outer
never
part.
seen that.
And
I've
the
seen
deep
them-
part is in the middle?
No, deep part would be like
Big.
old.
Oh no, it's just
Because the windows go all the way to the ceiling over there in the, let's see.
It would be, so the high point is at the window and the low
Right.
point is on the.
I've never seen that done.
But see, we
actually,
have
Tyler.
we have these here too on the side, so.
Yeah, we'd probably block those out. Those aren't doing anything for you.
But those are
Anyways,
nice
tell me
part
what
of
you want
the.
to do.
Is what you're saying the most
7
practical
o'clock
thing?
and
I
I
gotta
have a 2-hour drive ahead of me. And
Yeah.
So,
Oh, you do, right?
I,
With traffic.
I don't mean, sorry, I didn't mean that to come out as being,
It's fine.
Completely
I think it's
We've been
reasonable.
here.
you're in a very tough position. I
Completely
understand. It's not.
so.
All right, so my proposal is to stick with that for now, and I don't know that that's gonna be the biggest driver at this point.
Well, I mean,
in my
it's-
opinion.
It's $4 a foot. $4 a square foot.
So all the windows everywhere in
But
the
it's
Maybe
like
three,
yeah,
okay.
maybe
in the
three.
hallways too.
But it's-
Currently, we have the transom windows.
17,000 square feet in the basement.
So, which is, it allows light into the hallways. It's kind of it's part of the historic charm of.
Is that, so then that, I didn't realize that, I'm sorry.
So I would prefer to see,
The hung ceiling go away. 'Cause we still-
yes, leaving, in the classrooms, there isn't the drop ceiling.
So just keep in mind, the charm of those are going to now have a piece of spiral duct in front of them. I mean, if we have to run mechanicals, they're going to run down that center core. I mean, there's going to be stuff in this thing that is going to ruin your historic charms. Just be aware of those things.
Sure, be nice to renovate it in a way that didn't ruin that part.
I mean, you could have it run in the hallway and have drop ceiling in the hallway and leave the rooms high. And then have,
You're still gonna have to punch
you
through.
punch
and-
through with a supply and return and.
I think there's value to pricing it that way. And I'm sure, I'm assuming we can get a detailed enough cost estimate that we can see what the value of that is and have this conversation when we know what it costs.
I mean,
I would
if you put all
love it if
these
we had that
archways in the
process.
hallway,
but
it would have been so nice to restore those rather than to drop
I'm
ceilings.
just nervous we're not gonna have the time. Like, I wish we were here 3 weeks ago and we could have okay,
Right.
let's get some cost estimates, then we'll have this iterative process, but we're just up against it. And that's
That's where we are.
that's why I was taking, let's take stuff out because it's gonna be way too much money, I can just tell, That was my take, but,
That's,
anyway.
I think it would be worth it to ask the school board if there is a way to reconsider putting this out to voters in June. To really do justice to it. Maybe there's a really great reason why we can't do that, but
Well, one big
Your-
reason is
your
this middle
price for
school
the-
project was priced
Till the end of the year.
with them knowing what's gonna happen in November.
but how much do they need, how much does that actually affect the cost if they find out they don't get to take this building down and they find,
I don't know.
We don't know.
I'm
We
just
have to
saying that
renegotiate
that's the way they priced the project. And
Yeah, and the market's really volatile right now, so your $80,000 credit is going to get smaller, would be my guess.
Yeah.
It's their chance to reevaluate if the
Right.
price of the demo goes up, or it's just we're not getting any favors on that.
So we're getting a little bit hung up on this issue. Maybe I don't fully understand it, but it's to do with running. There is a proposal in the plan. Can we live with that proposal and put it forward and get the cost estimation on that?
Well, that's what I'm
we could
saying.
certainly
Yeah.
do that, but
Yes.
it's,
And is there opportunity, Tyler, to take a look at where we can leave the ceiling flat and price that out as well? Or
Well, we can do, we just need to know what people are willing to live with. Even if we put all this stuff in the hallway, it's still blocking all of these things that we're concerned about with
Right.
the transom windows, so it's,
I'd rather see
I
exposed
don't mind
ductwork.
spiral duct.
I don't either,
I don't
but
either.
it's, given the way that this is gonna run, it's gonna come down, it's gonna have to go either down the corridor or down the inside face of the classrooms, and you're going to end up blocking these things, so we're making decisions, I think, thinking with the romantic notion that this is gonna remain a historic looking building with no additions, but you're gonna have 14, 16-inch spiral duct, 2 of them running down each side of the corridor. So are we making a decision that we think is going to be the right one, that when by the time we put all of this stuff, all the pull boxes and the conduits and the sprinkler heads and there's a lot of stuff that we bury above ceilings now. So just,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what the right answer is.
I just went through an old school in Union, it's the old Thompson Community Center, and in every classroom, they drop down the ceiling and they put these window wells up to these windows, and it looks terrible. The whole thing feels like scrunched in, and it's just so much nicer to have that high ceiling.
We actually just did a project in Rochester where we ripped all of the ceilings out and left the exposed joists as the finish. It looks fantastic. Let me see if I can find it. With spiral duct. I mean, this is,
Yeah, I mean, I think spiral
I
duct
mean,
is nice.
having that exposed.
It's
I
not a
mean,
bad thing.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I mean, it seems like, for loft type residences and things like that, that's kind of a neat look.
I mean, that's,
So you'd rip out even like the plaster that's there now?
we took out everything. We
I
gutted it.
love that idea much better than
Well, you need a
dropping.
ceiling, because there's wiring and,
Yeah. I mean, this one, the thing is, you can pay more to conceal it so that you have nice looking exposed. So anyways, there are lots of different things that we can do when we get into the design. It's just,
my thing would be, if you have a new product on the whole,
That's
basically
nice.
17,
mean,
18,000
this
square
was-
feet
What
times
is that
4.
the same building?
this is, yeah, this is all,
$100,000.
I wonder if we have,
Not that much.
sorry.
No, I
We
understand.
have a
$80,000.
before
But to
picture.
have
This was
that exposed. I don't know if
Rochester
that's the
City
word.
Hall. This is the
So,
before.
I mean, I'd vote to take out the hung ceiling
And that's
Oh,
what
wow.
this is the historic part. And we peeled back this entire crappy facade that they put on in the 60s.
Cool.
Where's the, yeah. This is what it was when we started.
Practically doesn't make a
Wow.
difference.
And that's,
Okay.
That's
I'd much
nice.
rather see exposed
Exposed
ductwork
duct
than a drop ceiling,
Just trying to keep it clean.
even if it
There's
blocks some
acoustic
transom
issue.
Why don't
windows.
you
Okay.
go down that path, Tyler, please?
Can paint them or something with flowers and, I don't know, kids can decorate them.
so we're not gonna have any ACT then.
What is ACT again?
Acoustic ceiling
Acoustic.
style.
It's this.
Sorry.
Oh, yes, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
I don't
Done.
think so. All right, and then the
Agreement.
question about the doors, was that, I don't know if that.
It's just for new doors. I mean, we've got, especially on the second floor, we're cutting in a lot of new office doors and other
Okay.
components. So we've got hollow metal frames and wood
Okay.
doors. I mean, it's kind
So is
of.
there enough information for Bruce he knows which doors are staying, which doors are going?
Yeah, we-
You don't have a door schedule or when, or anything, I don't think. but-
We didn't do a.
Yeah.
I mean, this is actually already more than
Was Bruce the estimator?
Phil was kind of thinking that we were doing when we started this. But what we did was we've highlighted new walls.
Yeah,
So I think should be able to figure out.
make it count. That was my point more so. is
Okay.
Does he understand what's coming, what's going, and if there's stuff that's going, could it be reused over there? I don't know.
Yeah, we've got a few that, but by the time that you rip out old hollow metal frames and
Yeah. Okay,
We're not taking out the front doors, that we would be restoring the entry doors, right?
I don't think we called out to do anything to those doors.
Maybe this summer somebody could just paint them. Could I paint them?
Okay,
We'll
Tyler,
talk about that
All
another time.
right, so
do you have everything, or is there any other questions that you need answers so that we can get you on the road? And we want to make sure we've covered everything here.
So, I'm sorry to dwell on the ceiling, but are you, with the new plan, would we be able to get rid of this too and have just exposed?
we haven't designed anything, so we can. I mean, if
Because
we.
that would be great,
But what about cost?
I mean-
How would that change cost?
right?
Well, I mean, we have to redo the sprinklers anyways. I mean, the sprinkler
So
system.
this is coming out anyway.
Yeah, so that ceiling is likely coming out. Most everywhere else is exposed, and it's not going to be a big deal. All right, so I will keep new SAT in the corridor, so we'll get that cleaned up.
Hold on. New what?
New ceiling.
So I liked the pictures that you were showing where it was just exposed
Okay.
rather than the drop ceiling.
Did I just lose it? Oh.
There's gonna be a lot going on with that ceiling.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, if it's possible, if it makes it more expensive, I don't want to do it. But
It's probably like $6,000 worth of ceilings in the corridor, so it's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks your budget.
That's
I mean,
I mean, I can understand where there's a lot going on to have the hung ceilings.
Yeah. So
Like
we'll
if
leave it in
there's-
the corridor and.
Yeah, maybe.
there are these archways though that
Oh, I mean, I don't know.
All right, so
That's a compromise, you know? At
If
least
it's,
it's
But the thing
you
is,
know whether it's, there's a way to do it possible, or
we
if there's
can
not.
we can do all kinds of cool things, but if you're going to be into restoring all these archways and things above the ceiling, that's going to be way more money than putting in a drop
Yeah,
ceiling.
I would
I
agree.
mean, that's so.
I agree.
And
I
that's
love
what we've
the
been
idea.
talking about tonight, is
Yeah, I do
how we
wanna
can
see-
save
Right.
money.
I love the idea of getting this building back to its original glory. I just
If you
think
have
we-
unlimited
But we
budget.
don't
Yeah,
have
at
that
$2
much.
Yeah,
million
you just have
to
to
the
tell me
budget.
when I'm saying something that's
So-
more, I don't understand mostly when I'm saying something that's more expensive versus less
Yeah, so
expensive.
I think the least expensive option for the corridors would be to replace that ceiling
Okay,
with something in kind,
Got it.
and we'll have cleaned it up. It'll have we'll be able to hide all of that stuff kind of above in framing around that stuff.
okay.
Got it.
All right.
All right. Anything else?
I mean, there was questions about some different systems, on-demand hot water heaters.
Did we determine in terms of whether or not, and I know Keith, Tyler passed on that your first thought was geothermal. Tyler, I know you were gonna take a look at the sewer thermal cost as well.
Yeah, they've been crunching that, and I think they reached out to Wright Pierce, who's doing the design. Matt's biggest concern was going to be the capacity, especially in the winter the summer you'll have all kinds of flow because the demand is going up in the sewage treatment plant. So he wanted to make sure that we had the capacity and the flow of the sewage treatment plant to heat both buildings. He was a little concerned that we had used up a lot of that
With the middle school.
with the middle school. That was why the power purchase agreement that we looked at before didn't work, just because we only have X amount of flow in the off season. So, but he crunched some numbers for me. It's more money, but it's not crazy. So
Okay, well, it wasn't gonna be as much as the geothermal though, correct?
no, it'll be less than that. He gave me two numbers today that I haven't had a chance to talk to him about, so I'm hesitant to share.
Okay,
So
got it. All right,
let me see. Did you see any? I'm skimming through the.
I'm skimming through, I'm like towards the end. Lighting fixtures, are you thinking that all lighting fixtures go away and all new come back?
That's what we're thinking, that we would replace them with LED, and we need to look into it a little bit more, but there's a chance that we can pick up some savings through Efficiency Main to do that. I think now would be a really good time to do that. Have you done anything with Efficiency Main on lights recently? 'Cause I know you were doing them at the high school, right?
Yeah, they just, July 1, they just put out a new, they change every
Yeah.
6 months, so and I haven't looked at
So
what
it's-
the new incentives are.
So we would recommend, if you're gonna be in there with a new electrician pulling services and stuff, that you would just drop in some inexpensive LEDs. Those will pay for themselves very quickly.
Yeah, like I said, the 2x2s we've been buying.
$50 or something.
We've been, they're down to like $42 now.
For LED.
The rebate's 70.
So Keith's loving that.
that's neat.
That can't last for too long.
Wood floors in the superintendent's
Oh yeah.
level, I'd love to see as much of those retained as,
Yeah, I don't have a real problem
of
with
the
that. I mean,
carpet.
it's.
even
If
if
you
it's
did
a
that,
little
you'd-
mix and match somewhere.
I'd be a little concerned now that we've eliminated all the acoustic ceiling tiles now, that those are gonna be echo chambers. So that would be my only concern. We're gonna have hard surface on all four walls, the ceiling and the floor, so those are gonna be pretty miserable offices. So we may wanna add something else back in to deal with acoustics.
Or could we just, could there be
You can
some
put a
like,
a tapestry on the wall.
right?
So you'll get complaints about the offices with 6 hard surfaces. That's my only concern.
But is that the kind of thing you could like bring in a carpet or something if they, rather than
Yeah,
getting,
carpet or something.
Right.
Yeah, you could.
I'll keep an eye out at the swap shop.
I'm sure they'll love that. That's the biggest way to bring mold into
I'm just
old
kidding,
buildings.
I would
is
never.
All right,
So, I mean, the rest of it didn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Let's see.
good. Are you gonna be here tomorrow when Bruce is here by any chance?
What time is that?
10,
I can be.
that'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to,
Do you have, is Keith, is gonna be here, or we have keys and everything?
I plan to be here. so.
Oh, okay, at 10, yeah, okay. Thanks, Tyler, and
Yeah,
hopefully you
thank
can
you.
fit in looking at that stairwell.
Yeah, I'll try to.
Seems like there's an idea there, maybe.
Yeah, I'll
It
try
would be
to.
nice if Carmen could weigh in. Maybe we'll send her
Yeah,
a little
little prompt,
tickler
little-
email,
On-
SOS, save
on
our
the
stairs.
Old stair?
yeah.
It'll have to be. I can't spend any more of our engineering time on that. We burned a lot more time than I was expecting on those stairs. Well, we actually weren't planning on working on those stairs, so it's all kind of.
Little did you know?
Oh, boy.
Do you feel like you're walking out of here with
I've got
clear
enough
direction,
that.
or do you feel like
Yes.
things are still
No,
loosey-goosey?
it was good to go through that list.
Mhm.
I mean, it's too bad we didn't have more members here to get, the full.
Agree.
I'm not sure we had time for too many more members, but, but no, I mean, yeah, it is what it is, and then we'll make that one last revision based on whatever we get from costs and, yeah. I think the next meeting is probably gonna be long, but we'll bring we can toss the spreadsheets right up on the wall and
That would be
add and
great.
subtract, because
Yep.
the other thing to keep in mind, actually, I do have 2 more questions, is that we get that construction number, but then there's the whole rest of the budget that we have to build in. So, and this might be a question to take back to central office, is what do we want to carry for furniture and technology? We're gonna need something to get the internet running. There's gonna be some furniture that you can move, some that may not fit. So what do we want to cover
that-
there?
Is that gonna, you have to include the FF&E into the construction? Like,
Well,
that's gonna be funded by the referendum and the bond, or is that an operational thing?
that's the question.
Typically, it's a line item in the
Right.
construction budget.
Right, so and there may be that, we've got all the furniture we need for the MET, or for the Zenith, but we need a couple new workstations, for whatever. So if we get a little guidance on that, the technology side, I'm guessing most of it's gonna be new, switches, routers, access points, stuff that you probably don't have. Might be able to move some of it, so.
Because all that's going to go to the stuff that's in there now is going to go to the new school?
No, the stuff that's
Stuff
in
that's-
here now is already old.
Right, they didn't
And
replace
outdated.
stuff in this building knowing that the new school was coming, so the stuff that,
No, we're not talking about like TVs and stuff like that, are we?
it depends on, that's what the question is.
I mean, when I come to this school and give presentations, which is kind of often, and MET too, I mean, it's mind-boggling how awesome everything is to me. Like,
Some of this, I think
I
they're
mean,
moving a lot.
Apple TVs in every room, and so they're moving.
A lot of,
Yeah, I mean, the
didn't fund-
TVs have replaced the old projectors
Projectors.
and old,
And
so.
we didn't fund 100% of the
Right.
FF&E at the middle school, so they're gonna move everything that's operational that makes sense. There may be some stuff that's a little older. So it's just a question to get on there. The other one was, did you want a part-time clerk, owner's rep, and commissioning agents? So don't need an answer tonight, but those are,
Mike's gonna do that.
so.
Did you see, one thing that just came to mind, Helen's comment about the need for the kitchen on the zenith floor?
Yeah, we have that covered.
Okay,
Yeah, and I think she saw my comment and thought I was,
yeah.
that's,
I think we're good.
no way. would I-
And stuff like that, you may decide to buy residential appliances through your
Sure.
operating budget. I mean, it's probably $3,000-4,000 worth of stuff, so it's,
Okay.
and we've flagged it as a requirement for the
For
program,
your space.
and how we fund it is entirely up to you guys.
Okay.
We just wanna make sure that stuff doesn't kinda slip through.
No, there's none of stuff
Right.
in the kitchen here that can go over there, the kitchen and the cafeteria now.
No, I mean, they don't,
That's
That's
commercial.
just
they don't
two
have
from
commercial
two.
requirements.
Right.
Yeah, she's
Okay.
looking for simple.
Anybody have anything else? Mike, you got?
I'm toast.
Okay. Allison, you're good?
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Tyler.
These are those times where it's like your the hours that you missed from vacation the week before.
Oh, yeah, I know. I totally feel that. It's so stressful getting out of there, and then it's stressful when you get back.